I'd like to call the order of the Plan Commission meeting for June 1st, 2021 at 6 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Attendance roll call.
Commissioner Graff.
Here.
Commissioner Oliver.
Here.
Alderman Madden.
Here.
Commissioner Kazana.
Here.
Commissioner Buckmaster.
Here.
Mayor Petfolsky.
Here.
Senator Sputowski.
Here.
We have a quorum. Thank you. Statement of public notice.
The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on Friday, May 28th.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for the approval of the minutes from May 5th?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion, corrections? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, moving on to public hearing. Do you want to read the notice of public hearing? All right, actually I can. You can read it, yeah, go ahead.
There's a public hearing for Mirage Parikh requesting a conditional use grant for the purpose of allowing a vacation rental establishment short-term rental.
All right, so any of you that want to be heard on this matter can come up to the microphone, state your name and address, and speak your piece, and let the next person come up. But one thing, I mean, you're all welcome to come up and repeat the same thing over and over if you wish, but in the interest of getting us out of here at some reasonable time, if you've heard the same issues matter, you can just say, I feel the same way as so-and-so or something like that. But who would ever like to go first, please step up.
I'm Randy Scheel. I live on East Shore Drive.
Can you make sure the microphone's on? Just, can you tap it once? Yep, it sounds on.
Raise it up.
Just raise it up so it picks it up. Actually, you can just tilt it probably. It should be fine. Okay. There you go. That'd be good. Thank you.
I live on East Shore Drive, one house south of Mirage and Dawn. And by the way, we're celebrating 36 years, my wife and I today, and we didn't expect to be doing this today, but it's important to us. So
congratulations.
Thank you. We've lived there for 7.5 years. We've never had a problem with any of our neighbors. We've never had a reason to call the police. The only time we've had problems is in 2019. Mirage was in between opportunities. He lost his job and he came to several neighbors and he said he wanted to rent out his property just on a temporary basis until he got his feet back on the ground. We weren't real happy about it, but we understood his situation, so we didn't really fight it. And so he started renting it out. He had it on Airbnb, and you know, he says he was going to try and be cautious with who he rented it out to, but let me give you one example of how that's not possible. He said there was going to be a family function over the weekend, and it turned into a group of 12 kids that were celebrating a bachelor party. So, you know what goes on at bachelor parties? You got the drinking, you got the music, you got the loud noise, swearing. We had our grandkids that weekend, so it was hard to go outside. This went on all weekend. At night, we had to close the windows due to the smoke and the loud noise. And it's hard to, our deck and their deck is only 26 feet apart. I actually measured it. So it's hard to have any privacy. So there were a number of, and I didn't call the police department because I thought this was going to be a short-term thing. It won't be that bad just through the summer and we'll get over it. So we never called the police. There were other people that were coming and going and up late at night. You got to understand, you know, they don't work Monday through Friday like most people. They're trying to get as much fun as they can in 1 week. And the neighbors on the other side of the house, they are in their 80s and they like to go to bed early, and some people like to get up early to go to work, and you just never know what you're going to get. Put yourself in our shoes. So, you know, you like consistency. And when you get renters, you don't know if you're going to get a really nice, quiet couple or you're going to get 12 people on a bachelor party. So it's just, it's kind of, I guess, stressful and nerve-wracking that, You never know what you're going to get. So we had the bachelor party. We had other instances. So the summer came and went, and we thought we were done. And then Mirage called me and said, hey, I got this one person who's got this contract job with We Energies, and he's going to be here for 4 or 5 months. He said he's coming tomorrow with a realtor. He asked me to go and check him out. I said, it's really not my position to check someone out. So that person came, and he came with his girlfriend, his girlfriend's brother, and another person. They brought a utility trailer, 3 or 4 dirt bikes, motorcycles, a UTV, a muscle car, and a loud diesel truck that they'd start up at 5:30 or 6 in the morning. And 2 of the other neighbors behind us, they were woken up every morning when he started this truck. The people that weren't working, they were in and out of this utility trailer all hours of the night, during the day, during the evening. We didn't know what was going on, but they were doing something in there. The one guy was driving a dirt bike, and my neighbor and I were standing out in the road, and he was popping wheelies up and down the street. So we talked to him and told him, knock it off, or we're going to call the police. They didn't know when to put the garbage out to the road, so there was garbage overflowing. The one lady was throwing bread out in the yard for the squirrels or the birds or something. So we put up with this. We sent a letter to Dawn and Mirage in November, and I forwarded that to you guys. I don't know if you got a chance to read it, but about all the problems we've been having the whole summer, and just it was just. We like them as neighbors. We have no problem with them as neighbors. We get along. We shared some drinks. We like them, but we don't like what they're trying to do to the neighborhood. And that's, they get to enjoy the property when they're available, and when they're not, they're going to rent it out and have someone help pay their mortgage at the expense of the other neighbors. We love our neighborhood. So, so my wife was home, and it was the holidays, and she saw the people leaving. We thought just for the holidays, they packed up their truck. They had garbage on the back of the truck, and some of the garbage fell off, and my wife went out to grab the garbage, and being the little investigator that she is, she opened up the garbage, and she found drug paraphernalia and some pipes and some butane canisters, which are consistent with possibly making drugs. And at that time, we called the police to have them investigated. That was December 31st, and it was turned over to the Bureau. I called Mirage and told him what was going on, and he had said that the guy's contract had ended a month early, so they weren't coming back. So I called the police and told them these guys aren't coming back. They're from West Virginia, and so they won't be coming back. So I guess in closing, just put yourself in our shoes. Would you like to come home and not know, are the homeowners going to be here this week? Or are the renters going to be here? Is it going to be a loud group? Is it going to be a nice group? We like consistency, and we like the way it is. So we're hoping that you can see that and deny this permit. Thank you.
Thank you. And I should explain that as you come up and talk, it's a public hearing, meaning we can just hear. So if you ask us questions, we're going to look at you like we don't hear you because we can't interact with you. We will, at a later part of the agenda, be discussing this amongst ourselves, and we'll have conversations at that time. But just so you're aware, as you come up, if you look at me and say, well, how would you like that? I can't answer. So
I'm glad I didn't do that.
All right.
Are you guys part of the Lake District? Who are you?
This is right after I said I can't answer questions. No, I'm kidding. This is the Plan Commission of the City of Muskego. So I'm the mayor of Muskego. I'm Rick Petfalski. We have one alderman that's appointed to this board that's voted on by the fellow aldermen, and the rest of the people that have voting rights up here are appointed by the mayor. I didn't appoint them all because I'm relatively new, but you get one person every year you put on. And this is our city attorney to tell us later on what we can and can't do. So make sure that we keeps us out of court. So who would ever like to come up next? Just remember, state your name and address.
I'm Kathy Zimmerman. My address is S110 W20728 Danoon Road. I'm coming here as
a renter myself from many Airbnbs throughout the country as well as the world. A lot of them have been on much bigger lakes or oceans, et cetera. And I'm not bragging, but when we come to these areas, when we come to these Airbnbs, there are very, very, very specific rules and regulations that come in a very clearly printed out loose leaf binder with tabs telling you where the emergency contacts are, if there's water safety regulations that have to be followed, the state DNR rules. I know that a lot of these things are available online through our Lake District organization. I'm hoping those sorts of things would be in some sort of a packet already for these people that are renting. I did read through the letter that Raj and I'm sure his relatives have written. One of the questions I did have, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but they did mention that they had rented multiple homes throughout the lake country and as well as Lake Beulah. And I'm not quite sure what the size of those lakes were, but I do know that Lake Beulah is 812 acres as compared to Lake Dunoon, that's 165 acres. A lot less land mass, a lot fewer homes. We're closer together. And as the gentleman spoke before, he said it is a neighborhood. I think sometimes the larger lakes feel a little bit more like a city. I know they're closer together, but this truly is a neighborhood. And I'm sure that there's going to be every effort to make this a very highly regulated Airbnb, I would hope. But I guess sometimes when there's these sorts of consequences that have occurred over a very short period of time, to me, as a parent, I guess I would have trouble giving my children a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance. It sounds like there's been some difficulty, and I guess I would prefer to not approve an Airbnb on this very, very small lake, a very small neighborhood. I think even Little Muskego Little Muskego only has one Airbnb, and I'm not quite sure what that involves. I would probably recommend that we follow up with that as well. But before this small lake of 165 acres becomes utilized more and more by people from out of state or from in-state, but staying for a week, maybe 3 or 4 days, there's a lot of residents on that lake, and we pride ourselves on the friends that we have. We pride ourselves on maintaining very simple little lake association regulations, such as going clockwise around the lake. I guess I'd like to keep it that way. I would hope that the majority of us would. There's also another new development coming in off of Crowbar Road. There's going to be another, I think, 15 slips. It's going to become a small bathtub real soon. And I think just the party business, et cetera, it needs to be regulated. And I think what has to start happening is not only with one Airbnb, but any. I think people are going to start to call the police a little bit more often and having them come out to visit us. It's been a lake that's been in the back seat for a long, long time in this community. It's very, very poorly regulated with any sort of police, what do I want to say, on the lake, security, boater safety regulations. And I think we've all been kind of hesitant to call the police on occasion simply because it's a closely knit community. But things are starting to come out this way, and I just would vote not to invite further renters.
Thank you.
Chris Radel, South 110, West 20560, South Danoon Road. I don't have the exact experience that Randy had, but we are in very, very tight quarters there. The lots are close together, and it is a family neighborhood type situation. And our preference would be that we really don't want to have that on our lake. It is a small lake, and I know that there's kids in the neighborhood by us, and having people there that are not respectful would be very hard on us. And so if there was more room, one thing, but there's not. So if we had our way, we'd ask you not to please allow that to happen on our lake. Thank you.
Thank you.
Evening, gentlemen. I'm Randy Thorne. I live on East Shore Drive. I'm 2 doors north of Mirage.
We need your exact address for the record.
What is it? W200 South 10771, East Shore Drive.
Thank you.
We've been having this problem with Mirage since he started renting. Last year, said it was a temporary deal. He rented knowing well that it was illegal. He couldn't do it. Randy and I confronted him on it, the other Randy. He says we can't tell him what to do with his house. We're on a dead-end road. I'm retired, Randy's retired. We don't want people coming there for a week's vacation, weekend. They're gonna pack it all in 1 week. They have no skin in the game. They're gonna drink more, be louder, eat more, stay up later. That's normal. That's not why we're there. We're there for a peaceful retirement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Tom Buckholz, South 108, West 19889 Charles Court. Good evening.
Good evening.
I kind of go along with whatever everybody else has said, and I got a few other comments. Today we've got some, I don't know who they are. I can be sitting out.
If you can direct it towards the mic, thank you.
I can be sitting out on my pier, fishing at night, and it's pretty quiet out there. And I can hear people dropping the F-bombs from a ways, kind of, what would that be, south of our house? And I thought, we've got some neighbors that are in their 90s, and I thought, you want to be sitting there listening to all this crap? And, I don't know how everybody else feels about this rental business, but I'll tell you this. People aren't coming to rent because they want to sit in their backyard. They're coming to rent because they want to rent for a week or two, come out on the lake and raise some hell. And it's like the rest of us should put up with that crap? I don't think so. That's just not a good idea from my standpoint. I don't have any problem with any of the neighbors on there. I don't know these people, but I can tell you this. You go down to any of your areas in Florida, and most of your areas in Florida are cracking down on what's going on because of all the drug problems. They rent to, let's say, some young kids. What are they out there for? You think they're going to be out there fishing? My guess is they're going to be out there raising hell at night and keeping everybody up to the wee hours. And it's like, that's probably just not a real good idea. Leave it the way it is. We have a very nice neighborhood. I think most people spend a lot of money on taxes out here and probably appreciate what they got. Thanks.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tony Moresi, W200 S10721 East Shore Drive. My wife and we've been here since 2012, and we're about 6 houses north of Mirage and Dawn. And East Shore Drive is, as you can see, it's a dead end. There's not a lot of houses there, but they are close together. We love our neighbors. We love every one of our neighbors on East Shore Drive. My problem is we have had an experience 1 door north of us 2 summers ago where the neighbors were renting out short term. And they had in their rules and regulations for the Airbnb that they could have a limit of 8 people stay in the house. My wife and I counted 21 people walking out of that house on a Saturday morning down to the lake. All stayed overnight. A lot of kids, of course, but it had to have been 3 or 4 families all packed into this house. And, you know, even that on a Friday or Saturday, we expect people to sit around the fire and have a good time, you know, be up late. That's not a big deal. But those of us who still work on a Tuesday, you know, last thing we need is somebody sitting up at, you know, 12:30, 1 o'clock, getting loud, and you know how sound travels over a lake at night. And like the Randys are saying, you know, people dropping F-bombs and things like that. You know, you like to sleep with your windows open, but you can't because of all of the noise. You know, it's just, I'm afraid that if they get the permit, that it's going to be like a house of cards, because then our neighbors who fully intend to rent this year as well, and they're now 2 doors down from us, long story, how they moved from one door next door. But, you know, if one permit gets issued, another permit's going to have to be issued, and we're setting a precedent. And I think that's really dangerous on a small community. There's about 100 homes on Lake Danoon, and if you start having, you know, 2, 3, 4 of them that are doing short-term rentals, you know, it's all hell's going to break loose. And it is a quiet neighborhood. And just like everybody else said, I won't, you know, reiterate all that, but we just want it to stay that way. You know, we've invested a lot in our properties, especially East Shore Drive has had this huge renovation since we've been there in 9 years. And people have put a lot of heart and soul into their properties. And, you know, the last thing we want is to have issues like that. Randy didn't even tell you the whole story about, you know, the people that the drug paraphernalia and all that kind of stuff. It was really ugly. And we just don't want to see that kind of thing happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Holly Kelly, S110W20, 500 South Danoon Road. I'm sitting next to Tom Kelpin, and my husband, Tom Kelly, is on the other side. And Tom Kelpin said he didn't want me to mention that we're 3rd generation out there because you'll think we're old. But I did. We've seen a lot of changes in that time. My husband's family went out there in the early 1900s, 1909, 1904. They were in the field with the cattle grazing around them in tents. Obviously, it's a lot different now. The lake is small, has been mentioned before. I have nothing to disagree with what's been said before me. On weekends, especially since the 2 new subs went in, I've seen a parade of pontoon boats. They're not doing anything wrong. It's fine, but there's maybe 20 of them, just one after another, because there's no place else for them to go. The lake is too small, so everybody travels around the perimeter. We've done VRBOs. We've done quite a few rentals in other parts of the US. And there are very strict rules. No parties, nobody under 25 can rent. There's limits on the number of people per house or unit, whatever. You know, we can't let people keep getting away with this because it's not going to stop. It's only going to get worse. And who's the next person that's going to want to do a VRBO? We just can't keep doing that. And what I'd like, I think we could maybe cut this a little short for you. If everybody who agrees with what's been said up here just raises their hand, so that you can see. That's a lot of people you don't have to listen to now.
Oh, everyone wants to be heard.
That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. So did that take, nope, all right.
Hi, my name is Tim Lasky, South 106 West 20449. We have a home on the lake, and also I'm a commissioner on the Lake District. From a district perspective, our concerns are general with regard to the health, the quality of the lake and its watershed. So insofar as this conditional use may serve as a precedent or catalyst for more such grants, we're concerned about the increased boating pressure and the increased number of visiting boats. These platforms have a wide reach and will tend to get boats coming from a greater distance. They'll have bigger diversity of aquatic invasive species. Also, the visitors tend to know less about the rules, so it's a boater safety concern for us. I think, we've had some close calls out there in the last couple of years. So there seems to be an absence of police presence out there, and I think our lake's getting known for that. So if you want to do things with different types of watercraft and different types of behaviors that wouldn't ordinarily be accepted, where there is a better police presence, that our lake might be an attractor for that. So those are our concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Nancy Long. I live at South 110 West 20606 Danoon Road. I'm on the South Shore. I'm not in the impacted area. I agree with everything others have said. I like my neighbors. They're great people. They look out for me. I look out for them. I'm here tonight with my neighbors. I don't want renters next to me who don't know me, don't care about me, don't even care about the lake or the environment and the neighborhood. So I'm asking you all to vote no.
Thank you.
My name is Kevin Kubaki. I live at W203S11072 Point Danoon Road. I like Mirage and Dawn. Mirage and I have smoked cigars together and drank good bourbon. I like them as neighbors. They're very nice people. And I know there's certain criteria that you have to follow in making a decision of this nature. To me, VRBO situations are more conducive to resort areas, not residential areas. And this is truly a residential area. So all I'm asking you to do is please listen to my neighbors and the people who live on the lake who are mostly impacted by the situation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary Grundle, South 110 West 20622 Danoon Road. Again, I'm here with the neighbors. This is not the area for a vacation rental place. And I hope you are listening to what the neighbors and the owners on the lake that pay very high taxes are saying, and that you vote no for this. Thank you.
Thank you.
John Doe. Oh, sorry. Mirage Parikh, West 200 South 10,783, shore requester, along with my wife, of the permit. A few comments. I reiterate with what many have said. This is a great neighborhood, and I wouldn't trade this lake for the world. For those of you who are not aware, we bought on this lake sight unseen. We had never been on the lake before, in fact, I believe Randy and Bill, who are not here, found me in the lake as my wife asked me to walk in the lake to find out what the shallowness of the lake looked like. They thought it was with the DNR. The only reason we were able to do so and be able to put in such confidence that we were in a good place is because we had the opportunity to rent out on other lakes in the area. And so when we saw an opportunity on Lake Danoon at the referral and at the reference of a close friend, just 4 houses, 5 houses down, we knew that we were on the right lake. And that's really the opportunity that we're looking to do. I think in our case, compared to the neighbors the owners of the property before us, we've probably used our home significantly more with friends, family, other folks. So we are not trying to make this a 13-week rental. In fact, as Randy Shield mentioned, the economic component of 2019 was really driven by a circumstance. Last year with COVID, frankly, we could have been here last year, asked for the permit, not sure we would have got it. There's no guarantees, of course, but we had the opportunity to rent out every single week of the year, of the summer, probably to the tune of $3,000 to $3,500 per week. I probably could have paid off my mortgage for the year in 6 or 8 weeks. And so, or maybe over the summer. But that's not the intention. We bought this home to enjoy, to keep in our family for generations to come, ideally. We've been there 5 years, and they've been the best 5 years, I think, that a family could possibly have. And I agree, we do have great neighbors. A couple of things. One, we are looking to minimize the amount of times that we rent out, and ideally, we wouldn't rent out that often over the summer. Yes, in the past we have. Yes, that's when the highest demand is, but that's also when we would like to enjoy our home as well. So I would like to give you a little bit of background on some of the types of folks that have rented out. But before I do that, I do want to make one point very clear. I am completely dismayed by the activities that went on by the renters that were there in the off season. Under a monthly scenario, for background, we were referred to that person by our real estate agent who sold us the home, by her firm who vetted that person. So unfortunately, despite the best efforts, that is a horrible circumstance that happened. Now, for reference, for this past fall of 2020, we were going to rent out month to month to a couple who desperately wanted to be on the lake because they lived in town. She was stricken with cancer, and she wanted to live out her last days on the lake that she wanted to be on. So in that case, would I rent out on a monthly basis? Absolutely. In circumstances that make the most sense. Now, do we need to be more diligent about whom we do it and go through? I went through a real estate firm, through a placement firm, and unfortunately got burned. But if I'm understanding the regulations correctly, a monthly permit is not what we're talking about. But at the end of the day, I do want to separate that, unfortunately, for all the right reasons, the off-season renters did cause an issue, and I apologize profusely to the neighborhood and everyone else, and that won't be ideally happening in the future. But in terms of the occasional short-term rentals, in April of in the past, we've had 2 sisters who wanted a place to meet for Easter. In April, family in Ohio, family in Minnesota wanted a place to meet in between. I can't speak for the neighbors, but I don't think the neighbors had much of a nuisance in that scenario. We often get asked for wedding rentals. In fact, while I won't name them, but somebody in this room had a wedding coming up and asked if they could rent our home for a period of time, because there are not a ton of hotel rooms in the general vicinity. Yes, there are a little bit further out in Hales Corners and a little bit closer to Milwaukee, but in the greater area, there aren't that many hotels. We have had a number of inquiries, and the number of that we turned down because of weddings, that are specifically for weddings, because there aren't enough locations for them to stay, especially as families. So I guess ultimately, from our vantage point, we're looking at, understandably, we're seeing and we understand the frustrations of the neighbors, and I view you all as, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, no, sorry about that. I really do. I do value everyone here as neighbors, and I appreciate the amount of the solidarity one way or another, but at least the amount of time and effort that people are putting in. A couple of things to address. We do not rent out our motor vehicles, the power crafts. We do not rent our jet ski, our pontoon, our speedboat. Those are off limits. And ultimately, we have had very few circumstances where anyone's brought their own boat. As some of the lake owners know, there's not a number of rentals in the area where you can rent either, unless you go all the way out to Lake Country. And until recently, they didn't even deliver boats to our lake. So there's very few situations to have added traffic coming on the lake. Of course, the waters will bring new boats, but that's a different conversation. But from our rental, there would likely be very few, if any. And ultimately, if that's a mandate of the permit, we can have people, we can say no boats allowed of their own. And they cannot have more boats. I don't know if that's a concession that I can make, but if that's an issue, then we can make that easy. Because at this point, I don't want to move any of the boats that we have on our pier. Thus, there would be no room for them to tie up anyway. So that's one piece. Yeah, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, for our vantage point, we're not trying to piss off the neighbors. We're not trying to not be neighborly. Ultimately, my understanding is if we want to rent one stray weekend in October or in November to a family on Airbnb, the permit is required. Maybe we can address that as part of the rebuttal later. But at this point, it unfortunately seems like a 0 to renting out 365 that you need a permit. That's why we're doing this. We're trying to be legit. We're trying to do what we've been asked to do. We've been working with Adam and the rest of the planning committee in terms of permits, probably now going on 2 years. It became a non-issue in 2020 because there were no rentals. Ultimately, I give you those pieces, understand the concerns of the neighbors, but hopefully, as a slight reminder, I do pay taxes on my property as well. And at this point, I do believe there are some rights for that too. But I understand the concerns of the neighbors, and I'm willing to work out what potential is there. In terms of the precedent for other rentals in the city, I'm a little torn on that. Ultimately, I don't know that that our family should be the torchbearer for what potentially could happen across the rest of the city. I didn't love the fact that there was 15 new developments at the waters, but progress is progress, and unfortunately that was done for the greater good. This may or may not be determined to be greater good, but I would hope at least I've given you some of the background of why we feel that having the lake be open to other families that could enjoy it as well is really our intentions. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Can we let him?
Chris Radel, I was up here before.
One second. Is that legal? Yeah. Okay. All right. Just want to make sure you could come up twice. So.
It'll be short. I just wanted to say, I listened, if I understood correctly, why Mirage came here because of a nice family lake, okay? And now he says he wants to share this with others. We prefer that if he wants to come here and stay on this nice family lake and live here, that he does so. Sharing there's one thing about sharing. There's money behind it. It's green. We love our lake. I would again ask, please do not allow it.
Thank you. I am going to put a ground rule. I don't want rebuttals going back and forth. We'll be here all night. So that was the last of that. So. Anyone else that would like to come up and talk about something that hasn't been mentioned before, or if they haven't mentioned, let other people speak first. There's a couple other people. So if you'd like to speak, sir, you can come up.
I just have a
we can't answer questions, sorry. I can't answer questions, sorry.
Hi, I'm Lori Flores. I'm at West 200 South 10715 East Shore Drive. And there's two things I just wanted to bring up. One, just concern about notice of this public hearing. It sounded like that perhaps notice went to people within so many feet of the folks putting the request through, where the impact is larger than that. And so I don't know why everyone on the lake wouldn't be notified, because if something happens to one, obviously it will go other places in the lake and impact the rest of us. So just, I don't know exactly who sent the notice out, but I kind of heard about it from the neighbor who heard from a neighbor versus some formal notification of those of us who live on the lake. So that's one concern I have. And then I've only been there now about a year and a half. So I'm just one north of Moressi's. I'm not the one who had the party or whatever. So evidently they're on my side, on the next door over. But I moved there because it was a great, quiet place. It's you're right out of the city, and it gets quiet and it gets nice, and it's a great place. My grandchildren spend a lot of time there, and it's just a fun place to have my family come and relax and all of that. And so if it gets to be sort of weekly, bridal parties and bachelor parties and those kinds of things, it's not the same environment that I was looking to move myself and my family and activities to the lake. So, and there was, I think you mentioned that maybe he would not allow people to use their jet skis and all of that. I know that the people on the other side of me do that. So I don't know if that, violates the way the rules are set up now, but if there is some allowance, there's got to be some constraints on it that apply to everyone who is doing any kind of rentals, whether it's for a month or a week or whatever. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Shelley Shield, W200S10799, East Shore. The wife of Randy Shield, who spoke first. I just want to address a concern that I have because we were told, my husband and I, on several occasions that the rental that Dawn and Mirage were doing was temporary. We weren't told it once, twice, numerous times. It was temporary. And yet here we are. So we are a little bit skeptical when it's been mentioned that, there's a certain amount of time that he's looking to rent the property. I think it's just ridiculous that, we've put up with it for as long as we have, and now we're forced in this situation. And obviously, we have a room full of people here that are very concerned about this. And I would hope that you take our opinions and our views seriously and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you. While this gentleman's walking up, I know someone had some questions in the back. One thing you could do is come up here to the microphone, like you're saying something, ask the questions, we'll write them down, and then when we have our discussions, we can probably answer them at that time. We just can't have direct back and forth with you, like I'm doing right now.
Okay, my name is Bill Frederick. My address is S108 210 73 Waters Court. I'm relatively new to the community, but this isn't my first time with lake property. And I want to, number one, say that what attracted me to the area was the character in that it was more residential. It wasn't a tourist destination where people would show up in vacation mode, because the people who show up in vacation mode are not respectful, whether it's on the water, whether it comes to noise. They'll blow off fireworks at 2 a.m. It's a problem. I've seen it in my own experience, and the neighbors here have already experienced it. So I ask that you oppose on that grounds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Randy Thorne. I was up here earlier. I just have two questions on this permit. Is there a length of time, minimum, maximum? And contrary to what Mirage says, he won't rent out his boats. Can his boats be rented out?
Would anyone else like to be heard? This is new information, it's not retorting, okay.
Holly Kelly, I was up here before. Real quick, I was a military wife, Navy wife for 6 years. And the military has a great term. It's called demonstrated unreliability. I think we've already seen that here. And I'm not so sure that we wouldn't see it again.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I do have a question that when you are in your meeting to consider very carefully, and that is, I've heard about managing, overseeing, making sure people are compliant. Who is going to do this? If Raj is not there, is there a manager? Who is in charge? And is there somebody that we can call in the city of Muskego to be that inspector? I have read some of the statutes, and I'm just hoping that from what's being said here, you're paying very close attention to that, and I still ask you to not approve this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once, twice, 3 times.
Hello, my name is Dawn Parikh. I'm the other owner with Mirage Parikh at W200 South 10783 East Shore Drive. Just wanted to reiterate that some of the main complaints we're hearing from their most closest and direct neighbor that's impacted was all about the problems that were encountered during a monthly rental, which we need to make clear monthly rentals can continue to happen regardless of the outcome of this permit process. So that's not going to get rid of those potential problems. As my husband said, we did go through a rental agency, a real estate agent, thinking that would be the best way to get a good renter in there, and it backfired. So what we're looking at is being able to use our property to rent out on a short-term basis because we had fairly good experience with that. As you know, if you don't know, on Airbnb, renters actually can be reviewed just as we can as the owner. So if you have renters that come in and are horrible, you can write them up on Airbnb, and it's kind of like a rating, and people want good responses to being a renter because they want to rent other properties. In fact, when we talk about the short-term rentals that we did have at our property, one of the complaints that we got from 1 or 2 of our neighbors was that some guys were playing football or baseball, some sport, across multiple lawns. So what we did is we contacted those renters. We were very quick to respond. I believe within minutes that game stopped and they were no longer going into other people's lawns. We live an hour and 15-minute drive exact, door to door. We are not absent owners. We can come up at the drop of a dime. I came up here today and I'm going home tonight. That's how easy it is. We wanted something close. And so we're responsive. As soon as our neighbors told us something was going wrong, we responded and did something about it. We also had a cleaning lady that would come in after renters. She would often say after the Airbnb renters that she didn't have to do a lot, that they were putting the laundry down in the laundry room, that they were hanging the wet towels, that the place looked almost as good as it did as when she first cleaned it before they got there. Airbnb renters are not all big partiers bringing problems. We've had people come and want to rent our house because we have a first floor master bedroom. If you bring the grandparents along for a little family reunion, that's a nice way for a multi-generational family to stay and to rent. And we've had that. The other thing that I would like to share is that we're reasonable people. We have listened to our neighbors. We have had drinks and discussions about what they liked and didn't like about the rental process. And we are not looking to rent this out all summer long. My daughter and I move up here from the Chicago area every summer. As soon as school is out, we spend our summers here. That we're not looking to make this a weekly vacation rental. Yes, we had to do it one summer because my husband was in between jobs, and we still did not do it weekly because we want to enjoy the lake. I believe that summer we did, my husband can correct me, it's probably 5 rentals that summer. And that was a case that we weren't prepared for. We didn't want to do it. We had to do it to get through one summer. But we like coming up here. In fact, in 2020, my husband also spent the entire summer working from home up here. And that's the plan this summer too. But what we are looking for is we had an occasion where our first renter, about 4 or 5 years ago when we first bought the place, we rented to a coworker of my husband, Mirage's. They were kind of debating what lake life is like. So we said, rent our place for the week, try it out. About 1 to 2 years later, they bought a place here on Lake Danoon because they loved it. It was a great experience. In fact, those people that rented actually talked to our neighbors that are complaining about this permit. And that was a positive case. It's not all negative cases. And we responded when there was negativity. So we have also learned a little bit during the rental process. We have updated our Airbnb listing so that we are targeting, our target audience of people we would rent to would be families. You know, 2 families can nicely stay in our house, or a multi-generational family. The other thing that we're looking at is we have coworkers of my husband that would love to rent the place. And our understanding is, even if it's not through Airbnb, but even if it's a coworker that says, hey, can I rent your place for the week? We have to have this permit. Even if they want to come up for Thanksgiving weekend, we get asked questions about the holidays. In fact, our friends that we rented to that eventually moved to Lake Danoon, they have friends from out of town that like to come in and visit once a year, and they like to rent our place because it's a convenient, easy way to stay close to their friends, but not in the same house. So those are the types of things. We're looking for people we know to rent the place, not a bunch of strangers. And as my husband had said, just to reiterate, there are people in this room that wanted to rent our house that are now complaining because they had a wedding coming up. So how convenient is that when you have a wedding for your family to stay a couple houses down or, you know, around the side of the lake? It's very convenient for that. This is the type of thing that we're looking to do, not turn this into a weekly summer rental. We love Lake Danoon. We want to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Tom Buckholz, South 108, West 19889 Charles Court. After listening to all the sad stories here tonight, I have to ask this. Was this house purchased with the idea of living in it, or is it purchased with the idea of renting it out? Sounds to me like it's more of a rental than it is a place that I would come and live in. You guys have to make that judgment, but that's, you know, where I come from, you can read right through the manure and figure out what's going on.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once, twice. I declare this public meeting closed. Do you want to speak? I'll let you. All right. Yeah.
Sorry, you'll have to hit again. My name is Sandy Buckholz. I live at South 108, West 19889 Charles Court. I agree with my neighbors 100%. I just wanted to add one thing. We have a property in Florida, and we don't rent it out when we're not there. And we see what happens with people that do. The bottom line is, if you don't own it and have a vested interest in the property, you are not going to take the same kind of care of it as the owner would. And I think that's the bottom line here. There are rules that they have to follow, yes, but are they totally going to do it? I would say 90% of the time, no. We've seen it. I've seen it in Florida all the time, and I certainly would hate to see that happen here. this is our home and we like it. And thank you.
Thank you. Guys, you getting me in trouble.
Just Mirage Parikh, west 200 south.
Just before you speak, you're not rebuttaling?
Nope.
All right.
All 10,783 East Shore Drive. I did want to add a component. So the one time that I believe in the last 18 months or 2 years that the police have been called to Lake Danoon was due to some disturbance that was going on. Unfortunately, a young man had some issues going on, was out on the lake. I believe that, I could be wrong, but that was tied to a monthly rental that was at the north end of the lake. So I do want to make somewhat clear that it seems as though that yes, folks who are there short term may have more of a reason to roughhouse or more of a reason to take issue. But the same token, every owner on the lake has had large groups of people on the lake. Every owner on the lake, including my own, have used the F-bomb on several occasions, and that's just the way it goes. Understand. So what I guess I do want to make clear is ultimately having large groups on the lake by owners who are either having family members or other groups of their own volition there is inherently what a number of the complaints have been about. I don't know that anyone can say definitively that the larger complaints of the disturbance on the lake are attributed to the potential renters or the past renters of our property. I don't dispute the fact that large groups will make noise and have issues. However, I don't know that a short-term use would prevent, for instance, 2 houses over from us, there's a number of teenagers that are constantly at the house, well-behaved, all in good fun, but they're out there in the middle of the wind, they're out there at night, they're out there at different hours. How is that any different? Because that's a personal ownership group versus a rental. I don't know who they are. They have a number of friends that are not from the lake. So, on some level, I just feel like there is a bit of, in my opinion, understandably, the neighbors are upset, but it does feel like we're ganging up on something that ultimately a short-term use versus a large group from a known family that is own the lake or on the house for multiple years or multiple generations. 4th of July parties are going to be big too. So anyway, I'm not sure if that helps, but just thought I'd add. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? This public hearing is closed. Moving on to consent business. Resolution PC 036 2021 approval of the sale of fireworks for TNT Fireworks at the Walmart property located on Moreland Road. Resolution PC 037 2021 approval of the sale of fireworks for TNT Fireworks at the Pick and Save property on Janesville Road. Resolution PC 040 2021 approval of a 2-lot certified survey map for Swiva Gorski Enerson located on Woods Road. PC 043 2021 approval of a 2-lot certified survey map for Neil Wallach located on Ryan Road, and PC 046 2021 approval of an accessory structure policy regarding metal roofs and quantity of accessory structures. Could I have a motion to? Yeah, here you are.
Move to approve and gross.
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Passes unanimously. There is no old business for consideration. Moving on to new business for consideration. Resolution PC 032 2021. Approval of a conditional use grant for Mirage Parikh located at W200S 10783 East Shore Drive, tax key number 2020 87.012. Somebody's going to move to get it on the floor so we can talk about it.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, discussion. Adam, do you want to start this?
Sure, thank you, Mayor. One of the things that we talked about, we think it's important to kind of go over is to outline really what the law says on this to start, so we kind of know where our discussion's going. So the City of Muskego ordinance to start does allow this use as a possible conditional use grant in our ordinance. When the city code was redone a handful of years ago, Jeff, like 4 years ago or so, this was something that our codes always addressed, but they were addressed very vaguely. And when our code was redone a handful of years ago, working with some professionals, we kind of fine-tuned our language to have it a little more specific. In that meantime, state of Wisconsin also had two different acts that happened a handful of years ago that kind of changed, number one, how the city has to look at conditional use grants, which that's what approval is required for this type of use. And then there were also changes that dictate by the state what cities can and can't regulate when it comes to short-term vacation rentals, as there was a big push on the state level to not allow communities to prohibit these. So I think the first thing to note is when it comes to short-term rentals, the state law prohibits the city from enacting or enforcing an ordinance that prohibits the rental of residential dwellings for 7 consecutive days or longer. And one thing that's really important to note is that anything over 29 days is considered long-term rental, month to month. That is something the city never has regulated and has no ability to regulate. So anybody on the lake that wants to rent for 1 month at a time, anybody that wants to rent in their subdivision 1 month at a time, they can do so with no approval by the state, no approval by the city. No different than someone living in a house that they rent month to month. The big thing and the only topic here is the short term, which is anything less than 29 days. So yeah, the one thing that was brought up a lot was this over the month thing. That's a whole different story that we can't really discuss. But as part of the state law, it did say that communities are allowed to have a permit process, which that's what our conditional use grant here is, and that the city can, with that conditional use grant, require reasonable conditions. They can impose a tax on the rental, and they can limit the total number of days to no fewer than 180 days of rental in any 365-day calendar period. But they cannot dictate which 180 days those are. So the state set a set of parameters right there that basically says, city, you can't prohibit it, but you can regulate it, you can guide it, you can permit it. The other part that changed with that state law change was conditional use grants as a whole. Conditional use grants, which are required for the short-term rental, at the same time had the law change. The state basically said that any applications for conditional use grant, basically shall be approved is how the statute, I believe, is worded. And it just says that, approval or denial must be based upon reasonable and measurable conditions and not personal opinions or preferences or speculation of negative consequence. If the petitioner meets or agrees to meet any of the requirements and conditions specified in the code, the law states that the Plan Commission must approve the conditional use grant. And Jeff, please jump in if you had any other comments on that. But that's really the state law change. Now, if this request would have come in, let's say 5 years ago, before those state law changes happened, it would be a very different discussion we'd be having here tonight. But because some of those state law changes, they really significantly held not just our community's hands, but any community in the state of Wisconsin, I think you could make a case for. So now that's kind of just a little bit of background. What I'll do is I'll kind of start by answering some of the questions that some applicants had, and then I'll go into more fill-in details. One thing I think is important to stress, in the entire city of Muskego right now, there is only one home legally allowed to rent their home that went through this process about 10 plus years ago, which is the island on Little Muskego Lake. They have not rented it for many, many years. It was a previous owner that asked for the request to do the rental. Like I said, it was approved under very different rules at that time, and they allowed it because it was on an island, so it literally had no impact to any neighbors. There was still some concerns. It was rented for a very, very short period of time because the owner sold the home and the new owners chose to make it their permanent residence and never rented it again. Any other ones that are out there right now would be illegal. As far as, I clarified the whole month-to-month thing, that month-to-month we can't regulate. As far as one of the questions related to how the noticing works. So state law dictates how we do our noticing. Property owners within 300 feet of the affected property. So we're not here to make a judgment of who does it affect. We're not here to judge, does it affect a neighborhood? Does it affect a lake? Does it affect a certain highway, frontage, anything? The statute says 300 feet. That's what we do, is follow the state law. So 300 feet of distance was notified. It was sent out on a blast via our website where you can subscribe to any public hearing notices. It was posted in the Muskego, the Waukesha Now newspaper 2 separate occasions, and it was posted in library, city hall, and police department. One of the questions related to can boats be rented out? There's nothing that's in our code that talks about boat rental. There's nothing in the statutes that talks about boat rental. So I don't think that would really be in the hands of the city is if they can or can't rent a boat. And then as far as kind of how people check for compliance or oversight, any of these rentals that would be requested are considered a tourist rooming house per the state of Wisconsin. And anybody that rents for at least 10 days out of any calendar year has to apply for a state tourist rooming house license. That process involves, I believe, the county and the state, and they do have oversight. They require a permit process. They're not a yes or no body. They're more the regulatory body from a health and sanitation standpoint. So I know the applicant has started that process, been working with the county, and the city ordinance requires that if this were to be approved, before we could actually let the use happen, we would need proof of all the issued permits from the state and or county from the tourist rooming license. There's also some tax implications that they do have to collect tax on this. That's handled through the state, not the city. The city currently doesn't have any kind of rooming tax, but that's something we have had previously and may happen in the future, which could affect this property. But as far as was mentioned, the property's on Lake Dunoon. It's on the East Shore. The owners purchased the home in 2016. It was rented in 2019. As Mirage mentioned, he has talked to us a little bit about this in the past, and I don't believe they rented it last year, and that's kind of when we started some of the conversations on this. And at that time, we provided Mirage all the different city codes, so he knew what he had to meet as well as the different state laws that are out there. One of the things that's in the city ordinance talks about a vacation register must be kept on the property. This is one thing worth, I think, noting. It notes that the actual names and addresses of all guests on the property must be written in a register, which can be available for inspection by the Muskego Police Department for a period of at least a year. And the petitioner has noted that they will be tracking all guests via their shared rental sites and the signed registration book, which would be available. As far as the physical characteristics of the property, the city code does talk about, that they have to have one improved parking stall for every guest bedroom with the minimum at least 3, and that's achieved usually on driveways, and there is driveway space here. No parking in Muskego is ever allowed on a lawn, so no parking should be on the lawn at any time. Proper address numbers need to be provided. Clearly delineated property lines via fences or vegetation need to be provided, and having proper or adequate sewage facilities must be provided. The petitioner has met that they believe they've met these with the parking because of the driveway. When it comes to the lot line delineation requirement, the owner believes they do have some pretty good delineation with existing utility poles and structures and some vegetation. In looking at some of the photos of the property and stuff, one of the things that staff thought was that it did appear that there wasn't quite enough delineation, that there were some areas that kind of blended the yards a little too much if, that intention of the ordinance is to be met. So the resolution does have drafted in it to require the property lines be more clearly delineated with vegetation or fencing, and that must be approved and installed along both the north and south property lines prior to any renting or leasing the home as a vacation rental. As it relates to regulating the sleeping quarters in our ordinance, and any kind of guest sleeping quarters can only be located inside the house, meaning not in an outbuilding or no camping. So no one can tent camp at this vacation rental. No one could have their RV in the driveway as extra space. No one could stay in a boathouse or something like that. There can never be more than 20 people in the home or the maximum number of people allowed on the property per the state law. So the state dictates that. The petitioner has only, they said they were hoping to have only smaller families be allowed since the home is 3 bedrooms, about 3,000 square feet. They say it can accommodate 6 adults in the bedrooms and about 6 more adults in the upstairs bonus room and common area. The petitioner did state that their intention in the application is to try to limit the groups to no larger than 8. The Plan Commission should consider the impacts to the surrounding neighbors, as that is in our ordinance, and the proximity to other bed and breakfasts. Now, there aren't any other short-term or vacation rental properties in this city. There is one bed and breakfast unit, which is not too close, so that's not a concern. The biggest thing with concerns of neighbors is based on that conditional use grant law. They have to be non-speculative and measurable if we're going to have any kind of conditions tied to their concerns. As far as impacts of that surrounding neighborhood, like I said, we did receive 5 letters up front via email and mail that were provided in the Plan Commission packets, provided on the website, and as well to the members here. And we did receive a sixth one that's in front of you tonight that came in the mail this morning. All of those, just for a matter of record, were not in favor and had concerns similar to mentioned at the hearing tonight. Some of the concerns that some of the renters, like I said, brought up about specific incidences were brought up in some of those letters. So those are included in the packet. One of the questions that's kind of come up and the city's done quite a bit of research on this, looking at other communities, because we're not the only community talking about this right now, or that has in the last couple of years, is relating to the idea of the ordinance and the state law talks about that 7-day rental as a minimum. And the interpretation that we found in the consensus is that the ordinance talks about that the city can regulate less than 7 days. And basically what that means is that we can't say that someone can't do a 4-day rental or a 3-day rental or a long weekend rental. Basically what it states though is if a renter would come in on Friday, for example, and want to stay till Sunday, another renter can't come in till the following Friday. So it's 7 days past when the initial rental started. That is something that is not in our resolution right now, but if the Plan Commission wanted to implement that, they could, because it is not something that's currently in the ordinance. And then just a few other notes of things that are in the resolution as conditions of possible approval would be that we would want some kind of survey provided that would illustrate where these additional physical barriers would be, as far as the fencing or vegetation. It's noted that nothing can really be stored outside, so no trailers. Now, if someone has a boat on the property, they bring a trailer just like any other lake owner, that's acceptable as long as it's parked on a hard surface. But no other junk should be stored outside. That if the city would ever establish a rooming or lodging tax, it would be applicable to all properties, including this. That if they must provide all of the proper state approvals to the city before operations. Sales tax or any proper taxes must be collected properly. And if they go through the rental sites, a lot of the big ones, they're required to collect the tax for the owner, so it's not really on the owner there. And one of the things in the resolution also is we're recommending an annual review to the conditional use. An annual review is part of the conditional use grant. This is something very commonly the Plan Commission has required in other conditional use grants in the city. Basically, it allows us to kind of just do a checkup with the owner's consent, nothing surprise or anything, as there's some concerns with that. Just to make sure that we haven't had any issues, we would definitely check with the police as far as complaints go and see what kind of valid complaints there were. That's what I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Discussion. Who would like to start?
Just to boil all that down, and there was, thank you, Adam.
Is your microphone on?
Yeah, it's on. It's on. Yours
Yeah,
isn't. Sorry. Just to boil all that down, and it was extensive, obviously. One, we don't really have, because of state statutes, we really don't have the ability to not approve this conditional use grant?
Correct.
Is that,
Yes.
is that a fair statement?
That's the state law.
Okay. We have also limited controls on what we can both add to restrictions, and more importantly than that, just the logic of it. How would we monitor what we would consider reasonable restrictions? So we talk about a week. How are we going to know that? We have the log, but there's no really way for us to understand who's moving into and out of this home as a rental. Is that a fair statement? The way I understand it? But so I'm at odds with what's logical, because we're also setting precedent, obviously, going forward. So I'm at odds with what's a logical position for us to take. I don't know.
Yeah.
Eileen?
I understand that we have a lot of restrictions on us up here. And I also understand their point. So I would say, oh gosh, if a fencing or delineation of the lines is part of what we can control, can we ask for something like a decorative fence that's not going to block the view of the lake from any of the other neighbors, at the same time having some kind of bushes or something lining that fence. So when people are in there, I mean, people can walk through a bush. They're not going to walk through a fence. The lines are going to be drawn without any question. And if the police do have to be called, and I would say if there were issues, they need to be called right away, not, gee, I wonder if something will happen if I leave it alone. They won't be able to say, well, I wasn't in their yard, because it'll be real obvious. I mean, we have limits. If we do that and we limit it to the 180 days and then rely on people following the rules, I mean, is that doable?
So my concern, and Jeff, you can correct me if you're wrong, is the restrictions we have to put on there have to be reasonable. And the restriction or the requirement of the state says the property lines have to be delineated. I think a fence is unreasonable when you could put up a yard sign saying property line ends here.
But you can walk through that, and then it's too late.
It doesn't say you have to require them to stay within it. The state law says you have to delineate. There's a difference. It doesn't say corral, because once they pass that, they're trespassing. That's when the neighbors, that's their job then.
So then the neighbors have to put no trespassing signs up on both sides in order to prevent that?
Oh, if they verbally tell them the first time they come back, that's the same thing. They've been notified. They've been noticed. You don't have to put signs up. You have to notice somebody before they can be trespassed. You're on my property, get off, and they come back on, now it's trespassing.
But that could happen several times a month.
Yeah, well, could be, but Jeff, correct me, I think offenses, we'll lose that.
Jeff,
I think we'll lose that battle.
Yeah, it's got to be reasonable, and it's got to relate back to the ordinance. And as the mayor is saying, I mean, you have this everywhere. If somebody walks over the line that's your property, that's trespassing. And to force somebody to have to put up a barrier, that's a tough sell. That's a really tough sell.
Then it's also a fight over where the property line is.
No, it's not.
Why?
Because you have to delineate it, meaning they can put a yard sign saying property line here, like a $10 sign. They can put flags up. They just have to be able to identify where the property lines are. They could draw they could put string there. I mean, you have to have something that a reasonable person can be told, here's where the property ends and here's where it begins.
If I may, I recently rented a place in Palm Springs, and one of with the booklet, it said that if you violated the noise code, it was a $500 fine, and you'd be asked to vacate the property. So can we put some teeth behind, what I'm hearing is we have no choice but to allow the rental per state statute, but can we put some kind of fines or some kind of protection rather than call the police and say, don't do that again?
So I'm going to make a recommendation for a couple additions to the resolution based on some of the comments we had gotten, and I was going to hold off until you guys all talked, but maybe I should throw these out there first. It might take care of some of the conversation. So touching on your point, I think it'd be in the petitioner's best interest to have, because in Airbnb, you can have rules, and if they violate the rules, you can, fine their credit card or whatever for certain things. They can do that, and I think it's in their best interest to make sure that they have people that comply with everything, because trust me, they don't want their neighbors mad any more than the neighbors want to be mad. They all want to, everyone wants to just coexist for the most part. I see both sides of this very much so. I own a property in central Wisconsin that I'm going through this process right now, but out of the whole cul-de-sac, there's one permanent person there. The rest of us are all weekenders, so we're all going to be doing this, so we're not offending anyone. My home in Muskego, my neighbor was doing it. If I lived on a lake, I'd probably have some concerns. So I get both sides of this. However, that being said, because of the vacation home I have, I know they run you through the ringer to get the conditional use. One of the things I think we can add would be The only part is we got to have some kind of measurable on this. But in the event that issues arise resulting in multiple police calls for possible ordinance violations on the property, the owner shall come before the commission for a possible revocation hearing. Meaning, if this gets to be a problem and we're getting police calls there on a regular basis, we can call them back here and revoke and have a hearing, give them an opportunity to hear, explain themselves what happened, and revoke the permit. By having that in there, it's going to be in their best interest to make sure that these things don't happen. So that'd be one thing I would add. The petitioner already, on his request, I don't think we could do this on our own, but since he said he would do this, we can add it. By the request of the petitioner, no short-term renters will be allowed to dock or moor powered watercraft on the property. He said he's fine with that. Let's add it if he said it's fine. We can't say no boats on the lake because everyone has access to the lakes, but we can put that, he can restrict powered motorcraft. Probably do unpowered, but I don't think anyone really cares about a kayak going down the lake, I would hope. So that'd be another thing. The other thing I would require, which, like I said, the process I'm going through, we are required is a phone number for a contact person must be provided. In the event of a police contact, the police will contact that owner or agent, which will have 30 minutes to rectify the situation. Meaning if you're getting a noise complaint, police are going to call be it the owner or someone else, call the people that are there and telling them, hey, shut up, be quiet, or you're out of here, because they can remove them. Police can't kick them out, but the owners can remove them in the middle of the night. And we've all heard stories about Airbnb where people have been kicked out in the middle of the night. It happens. So I think that'd be something else to be put in there. And then Adam had mentioned this in his part, is that we probably should put something in there. The minimum term of rental frequency shall not be more than one rental per 7 days, which is essentially saying that if you do a weekend rental, you can't re-rent it again until the following weekend. Or if you do a week rental, then it's at 7 days. So you're not turning over more than once every 7 days. That's what I have to add. So any thoughts on any of those?
Well thought out, very nice.
Chris, you look like you have something to say.
I got a few things. So I guess I'm curious, and thank you for the history on how we've done the CUGs in the past, and I understand how we do them now, and we've had very few since that act changed, right? Mm-hmm. But I guess I'm just curious, if we were to say no, and really you say no based on what? A potential conflict, right? So there's a conflict with this use, and the conflict is something other than personal majority vote, that sort of thing. And I'm just trying to determine, I mean, we're always focused on our zoning code, the rural atmospheric quality of life, right? So how do you measure that? And then at what point do you stop? And I guess I'm unclear as to when we just, like, if we say no, what happens? And we basically say, look, here's a list of the conflicts, right? And these conflicts are the use of the property and the potential change to the highest and best use of that land area. So if that in itself begins to change based on this use, how do you measure that? I guess I'm trying to understand, because that would seem like a legitimate reason to deny this. I just don't know how you measure that. Other than police reports, some sort of evidence-based, right? And so that's the conflict I'm having now, because I totally understand. We've denied these like all the time, Eileen. We've denied these back since 2003. And I mean, just for that fact, but now our hands are tied a bit. But I guess that's my conflict here. And I'm not sure if maybe the annual review addresses that, where, say, hypothetically, not just trying to work this through, say in a year we come back and there's conflicts. What's a reasonable measure that we're going to say, okay, you're denied now? I mean, is there a path to ultimate denial or withdrawal of conditional use if, say, in a year or 2 years, certain conditions are not met? Is that?
Yeah, and you really wouldn't even have to wait the year. If you're having a lot of problems, you could call them in 6 months if you wanted to. You know, I understand what everybody's saying. I know there was a concern, and Mr. Parikh has kind of acknowledged there was one, or at least one, maybe more, concern in the past. But the past is kind of the past, and whether he did it right or wrong, that's all behind us. What we're looking at, or what you guys should be looking at right now, is what the applicant is asking for. And he's asking for a short-term rental, not a monthly rental. And he's asking for that for the future. So to try to sit here and say, well, we think if we give him this, it's going to cause this, or it's going to cause that, or there's going to be drugs on the property, or there's going to be loud noise. That's all what Adams is talking about, speculation. And that's really something that you can't rely on right now. So in terms of measuring, it's going forward, and it's really, I mean, the best of it is police contacts. You're having loud noise. As the mayor said, you can have this thing about, you know, having somebody rectify it within 30 minutes. The police are also able to issue citations. They're able to go there and say, stop the noise. Usually our cops tell you to stop, and then if you don't stop, they come back a second time, and then they cite you, and then they get you into municipal court. But all of this would be building, like a building blocks. You'd be building a case for the future. And so you'd have a police report here, and you'd have a police report there. And those are the types of things that now you can bring them in the future and say, hey, look, you're not meeting the conditions of the permit. And so now we're going to think about taking the permit away. So it's hard to measure it, but that's kind of, my advice is to not focus on the past. And I know there was a problem, I understand that, but the focus has to be what he's asking for now. He admits there was a problem. He also admits that was a month-to-month lease, and that's something, as Adam said, we can't control. There is no ordinance for that. So now we're talking about something that's different, and we're talking about a short-term rental. And I think the focus has to be on what conditions. You can't, as Adam has said, you can't, the law in the last couple of years has done everything they can, the legislature, to kind of clip your wings, to kind of take control away from municipalities. And so, yes, the law says that you can't deny this. I get that. But the law doesn't say that you can't regulate it. And so you can regulate it and you can put those conditions on. But the other problem you have here is the conditional use grant. So you got two things going on. One is you got the short-term rentals, and then you've got the conditional use grants. And on the conditional use, that is just reasonable, practical, measurable, relate to ordinance. Well, some people don't even know what the heck that means, and we're 2 years into this new law. So the conditions you put on have to be reasonable, they have to be measurable. And then the whole kicker to that whole new law that just kills me is if you put all these regulations and conditions on and the applicant looks at you and says, yeah, I'm gonna do it all, you have to issue the permit, which to me is crazy, but that's what the law says. So a person can just look at you and say, I'm gonna do all of this, and you have to grant it. Now that doesn't mean you can't take it away in the future. You could, but the initial granting of it, your hands are kind of tied that you have to do. And so, reviewing it on a yearly basis makes a lot of sense to me. I think, in the past there was this problem, and there really wasn't, there's not like police reports or anything that you can look to right now. And again, you got to focus on the future. And that's kind of where you're at with this.
So let's just So what would be if we listed, so here, how about this? So thank you too for that. That helps put things in perspective. So if we said, and I'm just suggesting this to understand it more. So if we said 2 contacts by police, done. I mean, is there a number that we can set? Because otherwise and I'm not looking for I'm
right.
Because this is new. So to make this annual review even worthwhile, we need to be able to, there needs to be some teeth to it where we're gonna, hey, you did not meet this. And I get what you said, Jeff, is that they basically say, here are the conflicts, here are the conditions that we set to address those conflicts. And if you don't, do you agree? And if the applicant agrees, then we have to approve it. However, if the applicant does not meet any of those conditions, then we as the planning commission can immediately pull the approval of that conditional use. And I'm trying to understand what specific condition would trigger that, other than just coming before us and, well, you know, it really, what was this? The cops showed up, didn't really write a citation, but they should have. I mean, I can see all that. And I'm not suggesting the police don't do their job, but they don't like to write citations if they don't have to, right? And so I'm trying to find a way to understand how we actually, because there's one thing to regulating it, but how do we actually enforce it then? And that's all. And I would bring this up for anyone who first came up. This is just new to us, so I'm trying to understand this too. So, because I've done these since 2003, and this is a big change, huge. So,
the problem with like trying to put a number on that, and I hear what you're saying, is you got to look at the gravity of each offense. If we're talking a noise ordinance and the cop goes out there and says stop it and they do, that's one thing. If we're talking drugs on the property, well, that's a much different thing. And so it's hard to say like you have 2 police contacts or 3 police contacts and we're going to pull the permit. In all of this kind of stuff, everybody has an opportunity to be heard. If you take their opportunity to be heard away, now we're really kind of in trouble. And so we'd have to bring them in. You'd have to listen to what they say. You listen to the police, you listen to what they say, you listen to the other residents, and then as a group, you make a decision as to whether or not you think this is enough to pull it. So it's hard for me to say 1 contact, 2 contacts. It's kind of got to do with how bad what's going on out there, how bad it is.
So one last thing. So then what you're saying is that we could judge that. So I guess in this case, if there were 2 police contacts, that may be enough for me, given the fact that there haven't been any contacts prior to that. And that alone significantly changed the rural atmosphere and quality of life of the area, right? I mean, that would be enough. So I guess that would be evidence-based. You could look at that. I'm just trying to, because what I'm trying to avoid is coming back here for any of us during the annual review and just doing this, trying to figure out what's good, bad, and have upset neighbors here. Again, that doesn't help any of us. So I'm just looking for something to hold everyone, right? And I just want to be clear that if this doesn't pan out and we do an annual review, yeah, I want to pull it.
And like you're saying, 2 contacts of whatever nature may be enough for you. And you're going to have to convince, all of you are going to have to decide whether or not you think that's enough. But as long as you make a good record as to why you're pulling it, if you want to just make a very strong record, and if you do, then that should hold up for you. If you make a crummy record, obviously that's not going to hold up. Does that kind of make sense, or?
It does.
In one thing,
but it's not going to be objective. At least it doesn't sound like it'll be objective. It'll be based on the
evidence
incidents,
you hear,
the
right.
evidence and incidents that occur, and it's going to be our own judgment as to how severe they are individually and collectively.
It's kind of like you're a judge sitting up on a bench here, listening to all the evidence and making a decision whether or not you think that's enough to pull a permit or not.
Yeah, I mean, right now, we can't say you're guilty because they haven't done anything.
Correct.
So we
That's
are
my point.
mandated to approve it with whatever stipulations we can do. And then if it comes back in 6 months or a year where there's issues, then we have a collective body that says, I agree, I don't agree, and collectively we make a decision as reasonable people. That's where they can be heard better than they can today. So,
one thing that's in the ordinance, so that if there are conditions that get adopted, the ordinance makes it very clear that the owner is responsible for each renter to provide them prior to their rental use the actual city code, as well as the actual conditional use grant, which part of that will be the resolution that's tied to it. So that's something that the owner will be responsible for, to provide to every renter up front. So if there are specific conditions, that renter knows what those are along with the owner. That's the requirement in our ordinance.
Whether or not they're going to read that is a different story.
Are we supposed to supply them with a copy of the whole municipal code?
No, just that one section. Just like it talks about the short-term rental section and then the actual conditional use grant document, which the owner will get anyway.
It needs to be signed by the potential renter.
That's up to the owner how he wants to handle that part. Our code doesn't get that detailed.
Can't we put that in stipulation? That is that they have read that and signed. If they didn't read it and signed it, we don't care. As long as they've signed it, they're now responsible to the owners, who is now responsible to us.
My hope would be that would be something Mr. Parikh would agree to.
I'm not sure how I would get an actual signature on it.
Stuff's all done electronically.
Yeah, just, electronic signature. Yeah, I mean, we can make an argument that that's reasonable, but I think it's better if Mr. Parikh agrees, just like the one about the boats, we just put that in there.
Is there a time on the ordinance?
Actually, we can't be going back and forth, sorry.
Well, I think the practical things that the mayor brought up before sound reasonable. But I suspect that this is a very small world for us right now, that this world is going to get bigger as time goes on. And I'd also propose that we don't wait a year. Let's review it. And maybe 6 months doesn't imply that there are a large number of rental that actually take place. But it's one of those where I think we're at the edge of the cliff and we're not quite sure how deep it is right now. And so I suggest that we kind of review our history with this scenario, this situation, this conditional use grant, a little sooner than a year.
And nothing stops you from doing that. I mean, in terms of our operator licenses, we lots of times bring them in, bartender licenses, bring them in 6 months to say, look, we issued it. We were kind of, we want to allow you to work and everything, but we want to review this sooner. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. That's your call as the body.
So what's that term that you would want to look for? Are you talking quarterly, 6 months?
I'd say 6 months. I'd say 6 months. That's my suggestion.
And because it's a short-term rental, I think 6 months makes sense.
Yeah. Particularly if they actually use the property as much as they suggest they're going to in the summer, there may not be that many instances of actual rentals. So we got to give them a chance to put it on the market and see what our incident rate is.
I kind of agree with Chris too, though. We got to put something out there so everybody understands where we're coming from. I did a 2-second search and we have 5 of these in Muskego on the lake.
It doesn't shock me.
No.
And we don't know.
And there'll be 10 times that many in 2 years probably.
Right. And so if we don't know, if we don't have something down that we can build off of, this poor family is going, geez, I wonder what I'm going to get in trouble for. I don't even know what I need to worry about.
So what are you looking for?
Well, what Chris is looking for is something that we can say, if this happens, or if this happens, or if this happens, you've got a good chance of losing your permit.
Well, and that's one of the amendments that I'm asking for is that we, in the event that there's multiple, and what would I have? In the event that issues arise resulting in multiple police calls for possible ordinance violations on the property, the owner shall come before the commission for a possible revocation of the conditional use.
And the reason I struggle with Eileen and Chris is that, there are two sides to every story. And that's why you got to get them in here. You can't just say if it's if it's a noise, if it's a drug, if it's a this.
Or nothing.
Yeah,
if we put a number in here saying two police calls, and I'm in the neighborhood that doesn't want them there, I'm calling the police twice and said I heard screaming coming from the house.
We could say 2 arrests.
Well, then, yeah, but we don't arrest for we don't arrest for most of the stuff that these people don't want.
Yeah, but you're speculating then too.
Well, that's actually a reality. Our police will not arrest for almost everything these people are looking for.
I mean, is that so out of the case where you would say 2 police calls and your conditional use is gone?
But as the mayor said, it could be.
That's speculating. That's
a neighbor I could call and.
But that's
twice.
speculating.
That's why we're here is if there's an issue.
I think the word
we can weigh
multiple,
in
leave it to the alderman and myself to bring this forward on complaints. Trust me, if there's an issue there, Alderman Kabaki is going to hear about it, and he's going to be in my office every morning yelling at me saying, "Get this on Plan Commission for revocation," and I'm not going to not want to do that. So, but by putting a hard number on it, it also takes care of that unscrupulous neighbor that is just going to play dirty on this. Because it is a property that he owns, and the law allows this use that he's looking for. We may not like it, but the law allows for it. We all took an oath to uphold the law.
Well, it does, and I agree with you, and I agree with your amendments, first off. But what the law says is we do it as long as the applicant agrees to meet the conflicts or to address the conflicts. We just don't approve this thing because state law says we have to. Let's be very clear. We've heard the conflicts. If we set the conditions that address those conflicts, that's it. And they're either met or they're not. So, and I'm not suggesting this, but what if we did say, okay, 2 calls? And then we get 2 calls, we come back here, this is just for fun here, but we get 2 calls, we come back here. What? Now that's objective. There's 2 calls from the police. The other way is subjective, and maybe it's just enough to know that it's going to be the applicant knows they're going to face a tough crowd if there's a multiple number of complaints, but the problem with being subjective is that plan commissions turn over, and so you're always looking for something objective, and I'm fine with your amendments, Rick. I'm just trying to prevent this from going on and on and on, because I just see this and because I think this does affect the quality of life and the real atmosphere of the lake if it's not done properly. So if the applicant agrees to do it based on the conditions, I'm just trying to look for a number. Well, then I just don't know.
Then I guess my suggestion would be like 2 citations or something like that, where there's actually something written.
And maybe in fact, that would be up to the police, and that would be good.
Yeah, I
because
like
the
that.
police would
I
make
like
their
that.
independent judgment.
That could bring them immediately back.
Exactly.
Immediately back.
That wouldn't be a
Forget it.
speculation because the police
timetable.
could assess that
Right.
when they showed up. I like that.
And the police have discretion, so if they're actually writing a citation,
That's fine.
in their opinion, something went wrong.
And then that would
Well,
be
that makes sense.
evidentiary, and that would be reasonable. That I can go, that I like.
But we're still giving them an opportunity to be heard. Right?
We'll give them a hearing
absolutely, yeah.
Well,
back here,
exactly.
right?
Yes,
Sure, we
yes,
don't-
yes.
Just want to make sure we're not
No,
just
no.
pulling it.
I'm just, and I'm doing this not just for everyone else in the lake, but for the applicant too. So any applicant knows where they stand and what they need to overcome
Right.
in order to make
Do
this
business for
successful.
them also, so they've got a
Exactly.
learning curve
So-
because of the things they're going through. They're doing this for profit. They're paying off part of their mortgage. They're doing, and that's what they're doing it for.
Exactly.
Along with having a nice place to live when they want to live there. So this is a business that we're going to be granting a permit for. and they have to follow certain parameters that we should be establishing, and having what we've just said, we can control if there are 2 violations that have been documented. Now you come back to us and say, what have you done about it? We can still grant more allowance for that permit to be continued, but you need to change this methodology of how you're running your business.
And just remember, the conditions need to be reasonable, measurable, and relate to the ordinance. So I think what you're saying makes sense. It's reasonable, it's measurable, because the cops are out there writing a ticket, and it relates to the ordinance, which is the safety and the community that you're all doing. So I think you're okay with something like that.
So
the question would be, is the number 2? Is it 1? Is it 3?
I like 2.
Can we ask a question or no?
No, sorry.
They're the applicant though, shouldn't they be given the
yes.
ability to
You
talk?
guys tell me you know the law.
Sure, you can.
Sure.
I'm curious.
But at the
about-
microphone, because we have a large TV
We're
audience
just
that
trying
wants
to
to
get
hear you.
we're trying to get everything out here, so that's fine.
My question is, who does determine is 2 reasonable, is 4 reasonable, is 2 citations in a 6-month period, or 2 citations? I just
So
want to know
2
who's determining that 2 is reasonable and not 4.
We would.
You would, okay.
Yes.
And
it doesn't mean that the 2 citations doesn't mean you're going to get revoked.
We'd be called in.
It's just
right?
called in to explain yourself.
And I'm not familiar with police citations and but if a neighbor calls and says, so-and-so's being loud, the police come out and there's no noise. I'm guessing there's no citation
Typically.
written because there's no proof because you could have a neighbor that calls every 2 hours saying it's noisy, it's noisy, it's noisy.
I've never heard of a police officer issuing a citation.
So that's why I feel
without seeing it,
citation
except
is a
for
little
school bus.
stronger than a call. Because
I've been,
we can leave here and they'll call 2 times in the next 2 minutes and we're done.
Right.
So I do think citation,
That was my concern on the
yeah,
call.
I agree. Thank you for
Again,
that.
it's fact driven, and I've been
Facts,
here.
yes,
I've been here
evidence.
6 years now, and every time an officer goes out on a noise complaint, they usually just warn you. If they got to come back twice is when the citation gets written.
Okay, thank you.
Usually, I can't promise you that.
I agree. I just want to make sure I understood the process of
yeah.
citation versus a call, and that it's how many,
Right.
and that it's not saying revoked, but yet called in, so we have some way to
Right, you always
understand the
get your
situation.
opportunity. You
Okay.
have to get your opportunity
To speak.
to be
Okay.
heard. That's the law.
Okay.
And with the citation, it goes to the violator, so the tenant or the renter would be the one that would be cited, and what we'll make sure is that the police keep us in the loop relating to these specific rental property or properties in the future, so that we're alerted, because then we'll obviously pass it to the owner, because your tenant could be cited and you might not know that. So we'll internally make sure that we're aware of that, so we can make you aware, so you can be on notice, for lack of a better term.
You won't get the citation, your tenant will.
We'll just be notified there was a citation.
Yes, that's
try
the
to
whole.
figure out that
That's
process.
the part. Yep, okay.
If I could add one more thing, somebody mentioned.
Is your microphone on?
Is it green? I don't think so.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Thank you. In other states or here in Wisconsin, there can be a cap put on if there's a violation, and the owners, to their point, that they live an hour and 15 minutes away, they could be here. If there is a violation, is that in our ordinance now that they would be notified if there was a violation and written up by the police department?
And that's something we can work with the police department on, because one of my amendments were that they have to provide a contact number for that property. And I have to check what our dispatch software has, but I'm pretty sure there's an area in there that call would come to this, it would come up on there that, okay, I'm getting noise complaints, I'm not actually hearing noise here, but they would call the owner at that point and say, we're getting noise complaints. They're quiet every time we walk up to them, but give them a call and tell them to be quiet, and if they're not quiet, they have to leave or something like that. So.
Which I believe the owner said they had done. A neighbor called them, friends of theirs, and said, we've got a problem with your tenant. And they called those people and they reduced the volume of the partying that was going on.
Just as an FYI, the town of Holland, which was sued on this short-term thing, in their ordinance, and we could think about this in the future, but they have a whole section on revocation, appeals, judicial review. And that's something that, as this moves forward for all of you, we could think about putting in an ordinance. So it's out there, and it's done because people are nervous that this is a new area and things are happening, and they want to be able to kind of have some kind of rope on this as to when you revoke and how you revoke.
One thing that I came across in doing our research, and I don't know if this is something that Jeff, you think we can or should do, or Mayor, or is there any thought or ability to set like quiet hours? I know that I've heard of that, of basically that, if it's daytime and people are being reasonable and say having fun, whether an owner would do it or a renter, but after a certain period of time or before a certain period of time, no different than like our construction ordinance, that you can't, have like construction activity outside certain hours. Is that something that we can, should, would, want to tie to this?
Well, it's reasonable and it relates to the ordinance.
Measurable because it's that time or it's not.
It's similar to what we do with, bars when they want to play music till 8 to whatever at night. We stop it at a certain time. That's something you could do.
But it has to be something, again, like you said, it has to be something reasonable. So we couldn't put some restriction of, okay, you have to be
5 o'clock.
or say even 8 o'clock at night when the neighbor next door might be having their own party and going until 11 o'clock at night. So you got to keep the rights of property owners similar.
Yeah, a bar is different. This is residential and it's hard to, they can complain. How come I had to stop at 9 and a guy next to me is having a party till midnight?
And there's already an ordinance disturbing the peace. Right. And it's kind of subjective by the officer. So I'm
maybe having it just the way it's written now
I would
be
encourage
enough.
the owner to have quiet hours as far as your policy, that you may want to say 10 o'clock, it's got to be quiet outside. But us putting that restriction in, I think we get ourselves in trouble.
Understand?
It can just cause problems. Yeah, I guess I'd leave that one alone.
And like I've said earlier, it's in your best interest to make this go well. It's no one wants this adversarial thing between the neighbors and them. It'd be great if someone new moves in next door and a year later they're like, I didn't even know that was a short-term rental. I stayed to myself. I never see my neighbors. Never knew it. Wouldn't that be great?
We're
looking for worst case scenario, but that's what we write rules and ordinances for.
We're setting up because this is so new, you're setting up a process for the future. Because as these come more before you, you'll be able to kind of base what you did on this one on the new ones.
All right. Is there anything else to add to this? Adam, do you have the list of what I'm...
There was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, should I go through and list it? And
I can go through what I have and then maybe step in if you think I missed something or whatever.
Go ahead.
So I am noting that one of them was the owner one, the no short-term renter, can't have any of basically power watercraft, right, docked or at the property, I think is the best way to word it. Because I know we want a loophole to say, because what if they moor it off the shores and not docked? I just think, should not have it on the lake, period, associated with the rental use. I don't know how specific you want to be on that.
The problem you're going to have with that is...
Should not be kept at the property? Is that maybe a better way?
Kept at the problem you're going to have with that, if they bring it on a trailer and keep it in the driveway, anyone can do that. It's a public lake.
So just say moored or docked?
Yes, sir. Please come to the microphone.
Our intention is not to have, we don't rent out our own boats, but I am afraid from a precedent setting standpoint, like if we rent to friends and on occasion in 5 years, if we want to let them boat at our dock, and not as a regular occurrence, even if I rent to my own family, I will stipulate that in the listing, we are more than fine to put, we do not rent out our boat.
Are you charging your family?
I'm sorry?
Are you charging your family when they're...
In the case of the friends that did stay there several years ago, yes, we did. And they offered to pay, and ultimately that's fair. And again, my understanding is, like, for instance, if I get called out of town and I can't use the house for a month, and family want to pay us, we always turn down family, but family often offer to pay our house, colleagues, friends, et cetera. So where I guess my point is, ultimately the intention is not there, but given where we're at right now, and at this point, I respectfully don't think we need to necessarily concede more than what's being asked. But from a neighbor's perspective, ultimately maybe my trust and integrity is out the window with some of the crowd. But at the end of the day, the intention is not to have additional watercrafts on there. But given that this is a stipulation that stays in place, that's going to be reviewed, potentially over time, if that becomes an issue and that's a stipulation that needs to be added or violations are occurred, happy to review that. But at this point, I don't know that I am in a position now to say forever, as part of this conditional use, that I can't ever have any other boat at my property. because I think that's a bit of a broader precedent moving forward. I don't intend to do it, but I don't know that it's something that I should be legally mandated not to be able to do.
Well, something we can't add unless because you're the one who volunteered. I don't think we can add that.
I think
We can't add it.
I can understand.
I was only doing it because he volunteered.
Yeah.
Would you be willing to, and I only say this because some of the concerns the residents mentioned, I feel like this would address those and I know this is doable because I've rented them as a Airbnb renter, what if you do rent your boat, have proper insurance and liability. That way there's no additional boats. You don't have to worry about the traffic being brought on that wouldn't normally be there. You don't have to worry about the cleaning boats and coming from other lakes. It seems like the bulk of the concerns would be erased. It would be treated as just a normal boat owner that if you let them use your boats and just take care of that and then don't let them bring their own. That way it alleviates a lot of the concerns that the residents had.
Well, my resolution I was stating it wouldn't cover theirs anyway. It was a renter can't use their powered watercraft.
Yeah, that's in the listing now. Like we're not allowing, and nor are we going to pay for the added insurance. Ultimately, Adam, to your point.
No, I didn't mean yours. I meant like the renter can't bring their own to the site. So if your family's using it and they want to use their jet ski, this wouldn't cover that.
Agreed, but for instance, at some point in the future, if a renter wanted to and made a big plea to say, hey, we'd like to bring our boat, for whatever reason, it's not our intention to do so, but occasionally over the history of the relationship that we're going to have with his home, I think that would be reasonable. So I guess let's just make it easy. Let me just rescind that concession.
All right.
All right. Fair?
Yeah, I want to make sure I'm clear. So there's no restrictions on boats at this time? Okay.
Well, not unless you're going to allow it, because we can't do it on our own.
No, not at this time.
So that one comes out.
Yeah. So the boat one comes out, Adam.
Okay. Mayor, you go through yours. I'll make sure that way then I have them right. I can go through.
Okay. In the event that issues arise resulting in 2 police calls with citation for ordinance violations on the property, the owner shall come before the commission for possible revocation of the conditional use grant.
And we'll note that as a hearing, meaning we would notify neighbors like our typical process?
Correct.
Typical hearing process.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's in front of the commission for possible revocation hearing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Got that?
All right. And then I have adding a 6-month review to this one.
Mm-hmm.
The petitioner shall provide a phone number for a contact person for themselves or a contact
for themselves or like a manager
agent.
Okay.
That will be able to respond to the renters within 30 minutes. So if they're in Europe, we don't want their phone number. They need to provide a phone number to somebody else.
Okay.
Minimum term of rental frequency shall not be more than 1 rental per 7 days.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Let's see, that's already in there. That's there. Okay.
In the original ordinance, is there a maximum amount of days annually that can be rented?
We don't. State allows us to do it if we want to.
The state says you can do anything more than 180 days, but nothing less.
You've got to give them 180, and then anything after that you can regulate.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
Now, one thing I'll make a note with that, what it does is it does change, currently it would amend the existing resolution to change annual review to obviously, the review every 6 months. So just, I think that as part of a motion.
Allow staff to make correct revisions.
Sure.
I just had one clarification when you're done. Go for it. So, not suggesting we do, just want to clarify. So on the boat issue on the lake, so if there was a potential conflict and the commission set a condition as far as boats on the lake, and the applicant doesn't accept it, then they don't get the CUG, right?
Well, if a condition's reasonable, if the board deems it reasonable, the owner has to agree to it.
Right, but I'm just saying that's generally the thing. If we set a condition and the applicant, outside of what may happen, if we set a condition and the applicant does not agree to it, CUG fails. Until the applicant agrees to it or proves that we were not reasonable or so.
Yeah,
so
but
forth.
then if they,
Well, I'm just saying though, that's generally it, right? So,
they get expensive.
I mean, as long as we're not what the old thing is an alderman, arbitrary, capricious,
right.
Right. I mean, and if there was a condition, and I'm not suggesting we do it right now, I'm just trying to lay the field here where, I think we have more clout than what may be floating around here. So if we set the condition based on a conflict and that condition is reasonable, then, and the applicant does not accept it, then we can deny the CUG, is basically my understanding, right?
Are you talking about like, if you set a condition and in the future, just kind of like a police thing, but in the future, they're not doing that, forget the police thing.
No, I think you addressed that, and I think the mayor's amendments addressed my concerns on that.
All right.
This would be, if there was a condition that was not acceptable to the applicant, then CUG basically is.
You could deny it as long as that's, I got you now.
Right.
You could deny it as long as it's
Right,
reasonable.
as long as this
related.
body determines that it's reasonable, and then we can deny it.
Right, I didn't understand that first.
Yeah,
I got
just
you
wanted
now.
to understand what our authority is. We can deny it.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You can always deny it.
Yeah, okay.
So one of the things, this is from the League of Municipalities has, is it's referencing the conditional use grant law change, and it states that if, and this is quoted from the statute, if the applicant for a conditional use permit meets or agrees to meet all the requirements or conditions specified in the ordinance or those imposed by the city zoning board, the city shall grant the conditional use permit. Right. Meaning that if this board would want to set a reasonable limit, whatever it is, the owner basically is choosing to agree and possibly get the grant or not agree and not get the grant. So that was something that was specifically cited in their
We're always stuck with that.
The word reasonable is what we get hung up on.
Well, and we're always stuck with that thing about if they agree to everything, you have to grant the permit. That's, so if you had something that was reasonable and they didn't agree to it, you could not issue the permit.
I think I just pointed out that reasonable is subjective.
Nobody knows it, right?
Anything else, so to even speculate that a court or something would think it's not reasonable is, again, speculation at its very best. The same thing we're trying to avoid in agreeing with.
Right.
So, I'm simply just trying to listen to the conflicts as we used to do it and try to lay the conditions to address those conflicts. And I think if the voting was a conflict, then, or maybe now if the voting becomes a conflict, we add it. Is that, that's possible too during the annual review, right? You could amend the CUG or no. See, that's the other thing too, because either we do it now and then we're operating under that one CUG, because in the past, once we approve this, it's pretty much done.
And that's how it is now.
Okay, so
I guess, and I guess if you're just using the boat as an example, that's one thing, but if you're actually kind of hung up on the boat thing, there's really, everyone has rights to that lake in the state of Wisconsin per our constitution. So, what is the issue with having a boat parked on the property?
I'm not saying there is, I'm just trying to address the conflict.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying, I'm trying to get to a reasonable, what would be considered reasonable. So we may determine that reasonable. I don't think a reasonable court's going to find us reasonable, and then we end up paying their legal cost and ours.
And that may be, however, I just want to be clear though, once we approve the CUG tonight, that's it. That verbiage is it. We can't change it.
And I think one thing that's important to mention is if there would be the revocation hearing that's mentioned, that's a hearing. 6-month reviews, annual reviews, whatever you want to call them, those are not a hearing. That would not give us grounds to change, because if you're going to alter a conditional use grant, that has to be a hearing process. So just like tonight would be the same if anybody wanted to make a formal change other than that revocation process, because we're identifying that as needing a hearing.
Well, can you, it sounds
Although I still think a 6-month review is worthwhile because it's more information that we're going to retain for future use as well as evaluation of this CUG. So my question then is, there is no overlay, once it's approved tonight, it's done, and we can only act more intelligently on the next one until a year from now.
For doing an annual review, you can add conditions every year. We did it to Payne and Dolan.
Okay, so.
I just thought, because anytime conditional use grants are a recorded document.
Yeah.
And I think with them, unless we notice them like we don't for Payne, see, Payne and Dolan's a little different. Payne and Dolan is the only annual review in the entire city right now, the only one that has a yearly reapproval. That's like what it is. Theirs is a little bit different than annual review. So we do notice theirs. So in their scenario, we could do that. We could here. We haven't done it for anyone other than the quarry, but that could be something we could do going forward.
Well, and I would, if you're going to do an annual review or reapproval of anything in the city, it would be something in a residential area that's going to have,
Oh, yeah.
That I would.
And I guess that'd be a question for Jeff, could we do that here kind of going forward? Or could there be something we do in the ordinance that's blanket for any annual review? But we have some of them that are so mundane for outdoor storage that I can't imagine them all having an annual hearing.
But I'm saying for this specific type of conditional use, if you're going to have an annual report or review on any, or an annual approval on any type of conditional use, this would be one to do it.
And you could build it right into this ordinance that we have already. Under section H, you could just build a review process right in there.
And couldn't we still though approve it here as a condition, as it's a reasonable, the board's determining a reasonable condition of the board?
Right. And
So-
at that 6-month review, even though it's just a review, someone at that point can say, we want to now move for a revocation hearing. And then you would just schedule that.
So are we saying that the 6-month review would have the hearing, or the 6-month review would be what the catalyst that would ask for the hearing?
6-month review would be to give information, as much information as you get. And if you got enough, you would say, we think we have enough now to move forward, and we got to give them an opportunity to be heard. So we'll set a date, we'll give them notice, we'll bring them in. It can just be 30 days or something, but that would be what we would do. Our best way to do it.
So Mayor, with that being the case, the 6-month review wouldn't have a hearing notice, but do we want to still keep the yearly review that would have a notice process to it? So maybe have both in there then, two separate.
Have the commission weigh in on that, but I'm thinking if you're going to have something,
Sure.
this would be something that I think you should be looking at purposefully every year.
And that could be something going forward we do for all similar uses.
So are we suggesting that for this specific CUG, we would make that amendment here? Going forward, the common council would look to adjust the ordinance to make it apply to all CUGs?
No.
I would say all short-term vacation rentals.
Just for the rent, just for this.
Just for
short-term rentals.
Yeah, short-term rentals.
We call it vacation rental, but it's short-term rental.
And then that would apply to all once the council
codifies that.
Approve the ordinance, right.
That is a very smart and reasonable approach to.
So with the amendments, it would be review at a 6-month period, just that, and then leaving the annual review clause in, but maybe adding to that portion that would involve, a hearing and notice? Is that what I'm hearing?
For reapproval.
Right.
And we need to do that in order for us to change the.
So what are we doing for Payne and Dolan right now?
Payne and Dolan comes back once a year. They pay a fee to have a hearing. It's not as much as the initial fee like this. And we notice it like we would any normal
This is identical
notice.
to what Rome does by me. Yeah, Town of Rome does this same thing for their short terms. They pay a fee. You have to pay a fee annually, and you have a hearing every year.
It's like all other businesses in our city. This isn't for this property. This is for covering the city of Muskego reapproval on an annual basis.
I don't want to get too hung up on the hearing thing, but I want to make sure you reserve your right that at that 6-month point, it doesn't just have to be a hearing in a year.
Right.
At that 6-month point, if you think you got something, then you move at that point to have a revocation hearing.
Yeah.
So I don't want to make sure that that's where we're going with this.
Correct.
For all
They'll have
properties.
the option.
Right.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with this specific CUP to basically reopen it semi-annually. And then let the aldermen deal with, and then once they deal with the overall, and that would probably override ours, right?
Right, and we could put something in the ordinance, basically exactly how the process should be followed, and then that would be what
At least
basically
starting
you would
off,
do.
this would be reasonable to.
It's a starting point.
Right?
Right.
And then we learn, and then we build our measures, our metrics, and then.
And the alderman can weigh in on what they want to do in terms of a 3-month, 6-month, year, whatever they want to do.
My concerns are addressed.
So then for the purpose of drafting the document, just eliminate the 1 year and just leave it as 6 months until something would change? Is that what I just want to make sure we're drafting the document properly.
No, that's
It's still an annual with the 6-month review.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it just allows,
Sure.
it just brings it back
Some
for a
intermediate.
request to go to revocation in 6 months if there's problems.
And when would we start the 6 months? Would it be the day that we would issue to the applicant here, you're good to go now, the day you can start renting?
Yes.
Okay.
Alderman Kabaki, can you address?
Because this property is.
Alderman Kabaki, you know the process.
You know better.
Yeah. What's going on here? Where do you live and everything?
Just dozing off back there. Because this property is on a navigable waterway, would it not be wise to make a statement about applicable DNR rules and regulations, which resolves the boat issue, because the DNR says you can only have a certain number of boats and jet skis on one dock?
There you go.
And size of equipment.
I'll just make an amendment that all state, local, and federal regulations need to be followed on site.
I think that's in the statute, isn't it, Adam? I can't remember.
I don't know if it's that generic.
There is
I think
a
it talks
part in
about
there
like
that talks
specific
about-
sections.
right.
We were talking about.
But that, it makes sense, and that's the way to do it.
All right, anything else? If nothing else, will somebody please make a motion? All right, will someone second for those amendments? Now we're just talking about the motion to amend. Any discussion on the motion to amend? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion to amend, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Any further discussion on the motion as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. All right.
Do we get to understand what we're agreeing to?
She'll talk you, you're not really agreeing to anything. We're telling you what you got.
Okay.
And
I was like, I'm just not sure. There was a lot of stuff going on. It was hard to hear with no microphones.
And
So
Adam can go over it with you in the morning.
Yeah,
here.
well, I'll go ahead and we'll be putting together some documents that we'll get you so you guys are fully understanding and ready.
okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Resolution PC 034, 2021, approval of a building site and operation amendment for P&B Station located at South 78 West 16355 Woods Road, tax key number 2200.996.
Move to approve.
Adam.
Thank you, Mayor. This amendment is a BSO amendment for some permanent outdoor seating at their business located along Woods Road. There's a portion of the parking lot in this business that has paving in it right now that's kind of just north of one of their entry ramps. And, south of one of their entry ramps. And as part of this area, they are looking at building a little kind of retaining wall to help enclose the outdoor seated area that will be on the existing paved portion of the parking lot. They are proposing tables and chairs in that area. They're thinking about 5 to 7 tables. They're talking about 2.5 foot high brick retaining wall separating the patrons from the vehicular traffic. So this is definitely a little more permanent than we've seen some other temporary type uses, because this is something they plan for the long haul. And they are looking at installing a gas fireplace in this area. Being that it's on a hard surface and enclosed in some way, staff was recommending approval at this time.
Discussion.
Is there any lighting?
They have not proposed any. We don't require them to have any, but if they want them, it is written in there that they do have to review with us what kind of lighting, because we do have lighting specs they'd have to meet.
All right.
I would think they'd probably want to do something, but they would have to talk with us further before they would do that.
Okay.
So any kind of lighting they have to come to you, like even like little landscape?
Any outdoor lighting on a commercial business is supposed to come through
Just want
us.
to be
Yeah.
clear.
Okay.
Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Moving on to Resolution PC 035, 2021, approving of a building site and operation plan amendment for Chip Manufacturer LLC located at South 64 West 15591 Commerce Center Parkway, tax key number 2166.997.008.
Move to approve.
Discussion.
So this proposal is for the chip manufacturer, which is locating in the industrial spec building that is just located behind Walmart. It's a newer spec building. This is the far western tenant in the building, and they're like a higher end or more gourmet potato chip manufacturer. And as part of their production process, they need to install an outdoor nitrogen tank and a vaporizer next to that. So in talking with the contractor, they met with staff and basically submitted their proposals. So what they're looking at doing is putting it completely behind the building. So you really should not see it at all from public view, as south side is surrounded by woods. The west side is surrounded by Walmart and the big wall behind Walmart, and the east side has a berm with shrubbery. And this is on the far west part of this building, so it won't be visible from those homes that are to the east. The silo or the tank is pretty tall, but is definitely shorter than the building, as well as there's that vaporizer, like I mentioned. They're going to be then built within a containment wall system for safety measures, which will be surrounded then by bollards. And one of the things that we have listed in here is that we are recommending that they have that, number one, the bollards match the building color or complement the building color or in contrast to the building color. It was how the original approval was listed. We don't want to see them yellow and color. Actually, hold on, let me read this one here. There's a couple of these that were slightly different. Yeah, the way that the original approval for the building was listed is the bollards must be painted to match the other bollards that are behind the building, which will be painted a color that will match the color scheme of the building and the structure. It can be contrasting to the base building color if they would like. But one thing we have noted in there is, as far as the color goes, we're recommending that the vaporizer and nitrogen tank be painted to match the building color, just to help it be a little more uniform. And that we noted the only exception to this would be if for some reason the tank manufacturer, tank supplier says it can't be. Maybe there's some kind of coating process on it or something. You know, sometimes tanks, when you're dealing with different chemicals, are sensitive. That would be the only exception to that clause that's listed in the resolution. Otherwise, we're recommending approval to this proposal.
Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to Resolution PC 038, 2021, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for Walmart located at W159 South 6530 Moreland Road, tax key number 2169.999.003. Somebody want to make a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion.
So this is for some site changes and some facade changes for the Walmart store. First of all, the first kind of part of the project is they're looking at doing some nationwide kind of rebranding or updates to their stores. A lot of their stores are browns and tans, at least the store here. There are some gray features and some of the more decorative elements. What they're looking at doing is going more to a gray and blue color scheme, predominantly grays with some slight blue accent colors. And then they're looking at basically painting then any of the main non-precast panel facade areas, which is predominantly the front elevation in the majority of the sides, but not all the sides. It typically excludes the rear. Any of the areas of the building that have a precast panel construction, which are typically more towards the back of the sides or the back of the building, because of the texture of the panels, Walmart and their contractors have learned that the paint doesn't stick well and it peels over time just because of the texture. So they're planning on leaving those the lighter tan color, but any material that is not those precast panels, so any more of the decorative brick, decorative block, are going to be more that gray tone. As part of this project then, they're also going to be redoing some signage, which would be handled via a separate sign permit. as part of this project. Also, currently, if you do any of their grocery pickup services, they're located right now on the south side of the building. They're proposing to relocate these to the north side of the building. I'm assuming a little bit for visibility, but more so it allows them more spaces for pickup. I think right now they only have like 8 or 10 or 12 stalls, and I think they're proposing somewhere in the range of 20 some stalls. So their pickup, I think, is really, their pickup business has picked up, hence the desire to have more customer friendly located areas for the outdoor pickup. So they're moving that from the south to the north side. And that brought up the question of the seasonal garden sales, which we approved at the last meeting, are in the same area. So what they're doing as part of it also is moving the seasonal garden sales just west of the main north-south driveway. So they'll be in the same general area that Plan Commission approved last time, just a little further west, still following all the same approval conditions that were in that original outdoor approval. And otherwise, we're recommending approval.
Discussion?
Are they requesting larger signage, square footage signage than they had presently, or just changing the verbiage on the signs?
I don't know how it compares to what's there. I can assure you it will meet the ordinance requirement, which is uniform across the city at 5% of the dot area. I don't think they're anywhere near that now, and I don't think they're going anywhere near that. 3% in this area. But so yeah, no, they will be under whatever the ordinance requires. It might be a little bit different, but when you look at the drawings show what's being proposed new, and given that big facade, I think you'll see quickly it's by no means excessive.
Any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Moving on to Resolution PC 041-2021, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for Soiree located at South 73 West 16582 Janesville Road, tax key number 2198.993.
Second.
Discussion.
So this request is for soiree and serendipity redesign. This is a BSO amendment request asking to eliminate the requirement of having to have asphalt or paved parking in the rear of the building and to be allowed to continue to have their outdoor seating area located next to the wine bar for the wine bar activities. This item ultimately was a condition of approval resolution that was in 2019. A paved parking area was required to be installed by June 30th of 2020. There were some previous agreements from 2018 and 2019 where the owners had some agreements with adjacent property owners for shared parking. But coming in the 2019 Plan Commission review, it was required by Plan Commission to extend the hard surface parking on their property. Originally, it was noted that the hard surface parking needed to be installed by June 30th of 2020. The applicant did obtain a zoning permit for the parking lot. They did install crushed gravel at that time by the June 30th, 2020 deadline. The parking area has not been paved, and this actually was part of a conversation with the Common Council last year, as the paving was a condition of their business registration, which ties to their liquor license. It was when it was not paved in that original time period, the Common Council did grant an extension to September 30th of 2020, pending the completion of the paved parking. At that time, the applicant received another extension from the Plan Commission to June 30th of this year to have the parking lot paved and properly striped. As of this time, the parking lot is still gravel or traffic bond in the back of the property. So the proposal by the applicants is to not have to pave the parking lot at any point. As how it's listed, it doesn't give a certain time frame. They're stating, the applicant has stated that the traffic bond is eco-friendly, a permeable surface that allows drainage back into the ground without pooling or causing potholes or standing water. The petitioner stated that the greater use of the parking lot and the more stable and the more compacted the surface gets. According to Scott Krager, the Director of Public Works and Development, per him, the Wisconsin Department of Natural Resources Technical Standard 1008 and the Metropolitan Milwaukee Sewage District, Chapter 13, which the city is within, identifies traffic bond as an impervious surface. They actually look at traffic bond as being the same as asphalt or concrete when it comes to permeability. They actually also look at as traffic bond or gravel are actually more prone to potholes, divots, poor drainage, and or plowing issues, and the inability or hard difficulty to mark parking stalls. The additional request by the applicant is to have, excuse me, I jumped over here some here. One of the things that was also mentioned by the applicant was about the idea of the parking lot being more of an aesthetic thing. And yes, the city has approved parking in a paved form for aesthetic visibility purposes, but also for practicality of maintenance. The solid surface is typically easier to maintain. One thing was important to mention that the city of Muskego has not approved in my time here that I am aware of any other newer commercial businesses along a major commercial corridor that don't have a paved parking lot. The ordinance does identify parking lot being paved if it's intended to be for more than 4 cars, which parking lots typically are. The Plan Commission needs to discuss whether or not they agree or don't agree with the request, and if they, depending on what they agree or don't agree, they would need to establish a time frame as to when the parking lot would need to be paved. One thing the applicant is also noting is relating to the outdoor seating. The outdoor seating that was approved last year, the Plan Commission noted they wanted to see some more formal seating plan approved. The outdoor seating plan is planned to be improved with some flowers, planters, mulch, and et cetera to maintain the comfortable and welcoming and relaxed atmosphere that is intended amongst the area. They want to have a very relaxed kind of backyard feel out there next to the business. There are no permanent structures planned, and the Plan Commission would need to discuss if they're content with what is being proposed in the outdoor area. There's no other exterior changes proposed at the property at this time.
Discussion.
My comments, my comments would be that the parking on most commercial businesses are up front and you can see them. This particular application, if you look at the drawing, is where the TB was put in, the traffic bond was put in, is in the rear of the building, and only customers that are going back there to park would be accessing that part of the property. So it's not a hindrance to view anybody else in the community. The other thing is that traffic bond is a very easy maintainable property that you can just add more TB and roll it again versus having hollow cracked asphalt that has to be maintained and sealed. So I don't see a problem with the type of product they have out there now on a continual basis.
Adam, I have a question. Does TB increase or cause dust or erosion issues at all?
There were a lot of things when I first started here, a lot of concerns when people were looking for gravel, and a big reason they weren't approved or they were approved on a very temporary basis was dust. Gravel in general can be dusty, whether it's traffic bond, whether it's gravel. You know, we typically classify them all the same as they all have similar characteristics. They can be dusty. It kind of depends. When you put new stuff in, they get dusty. When it gets, washed out by more rain, it's less likely to be dusty. I know, like, for example, at Payne and Dolan with the quarry, like, they have automatic sprinkler systems because they deal with a lot of gravel that gets dusty, so that if trucks have dust on them, they have to drive through the sprinkler system to wet down that to make sure it doesn't get dusty. That's typically one of the things the ordinance talks about is parking lots should be in a dust-free condition.
Does the petitioner want to add anything?
Yes, my name is Rick Hans, my wife Nicole. Just to clarify too, so yes, in the beginning we signed, we've only been open since March 1st of 2018. From March 1st we obtained an agreement to have adjacent parking for overflow, and that was with Tri-Town, and that ended in June 30th, 2018. We then renewed it with Firestone, which was the other side of our property, July 1st to June 30th of 2019. We obtained another for overflow parking with DeWinter Eye Care Clinic from July 1st of 2019 to 2020. We were in the process of, like I said, Adam mentioned about getting our parking lot in. We had talked about having it traffic bonded first, given having it multiple seasons, so that would be less dusty. That was a key concern. Our parking lot is actually from the city, the street at Janesville Road is actually 135 feet from the actual road itself. As Commissioner Mark noted, it's actually, I don't know if there's another picture you can show that actually shows like the proximity. It's because it's so fairly new, it's not on any Yahoo Maps, so we kind of etched it back there, if you will, to give you a perspective. There's basically two reasons that we're kind of requesting this. One, it got put in May of last year during COVID. they just showed up after we had paid them in the previous year. But like I said, so we've had this entire time with COVID paid for the first portion of it, and what we're requesting now because of the vicinity and the additional costs that having it asphalted, our latest quote has come around $17,000 to have it redone. In this, like I said, we're still coming out of COVID. We're not nearly at the same point of where we were from a productivity or sales perspective. It's just my wife and I. So these types of expenses, I think when what you've seen before and presented to you about additional outdoor seating for additional help for restaurants and bars because of COVID, we're just asking you not to take the money away that we would use elsewhere. I mean, like I said, this is a fairly large expense for something that is, like I said, 135 feet away from the actual visibility. And we've actually gone through the corridor of Janesville. You are correct. You may not have approved anything as of recent, but when a business gets sold or closes and gets repurchased or gets reused, no changes to their parking lot has ever been required of anyone. So businesses but because we put in the parking lot that was requested of us, we're getting, I guess, revisited or brought up to code where anybody who joins a new business, or for example, a business goes out of business, somebody takes over the building, nothing gets changed to their property, even though they may have traffic bound or gravel. I cited 9 locations, 2 residential and 9 businesses, actually 7 businesses on Janesville Road that still have a gravel parking lot as well. So that's what we're trying to figure out is consistency, or at minimum, if we can get an extension due to COVID again. We did not anticipate that this was going to take another, I guess we're in the 15th month now of COVID experiences, and I'm hoping we'll see a change, but that's kind of what the reason why we brought this forward today.
Okay, thank you. Mm-hmm. Any questions for the petitioner?
I don't have any for the petitioner, but I guess I don't have an issue with the TTV either, though I do understand we've not done this or allowed it in the past, but this is way back. And if you've ever sat back there, I think if you had any sort of pavement, the backyard atmosphere might be gone in that respect. So however we have to make this work, I'm fine with deferring it or just giving them another year and then just dealing with the outdoor request that they're offering. I'm not going to get into a discussion on COVID and just fine.
So, my opinion, the cost part in running a small business isn't falling on deaf ears. Believe me, I've run one. I know what it's like to have unexpected expenses. However, the argument of, we don't make new businesses improve their parking lot on transfer. We also don't make them upgrade their electrical or do anything else that code of changes that has been done from years past. Your grandfathered in. However, if they were to buy a business and redo the electrical panel, they're going to have to bring the electrical panel up to what current standards are. Parking, now, I think Commissioner Buckmaster might be stretching it a little bit of losing the background feel for that. But it doesn't just affect them, it affects their neighbors. You have a car service center right next door where people are getting their cars serviced. The car is sitting there all day. They dropped off a clean car and now it's covered with dust because of a gravel parking lot next door. Those are all things that we need to consider. The other thing is the precedent setting on this. If you're going to go forward with this, of now allowing it here, when are we and when aren't we going to require paving to begin to start and end? Firestone right next door is probably a good example of that. Those back slots, you can't see a lot of that parking lot. Well, if something comes in like that, are we going to allow that to be gravel and the rest of it paved, the stuff you can see? So, it's not as simple of a decision. We all like Rick and Nicole, and we like to see them succeed. But just saying you don't have to do it, I think that's dangerous. Give them more time. That I can deal with. But to perpetually say you're out of this, I think we're treading on bad precedents here.
I agree.
I would hope that we could give them at least an extension of 12 months to work through COVID, which still isn't, hopefully everybody's business will pick up, but Having owned my own business also, I feel the pain when you haven't had the revenue that you had hoped for and the expense that you hadn't counted on. I'd like to extend it for a period of time.
And I think that would be my recommendation. I mean, I understand lost revenue, and they're in a business that even if they could get the business, you probably can't get the help to help at this point. It's just like they get beat up from both ends. But I think it's a bad precedent.
Can we extend it for a year?
Yeah, you can extend it to whatever you want.
So I would move, well, we still need the other part. So I guess.
So for this part, if you're proposing is there consensus on a year?
I would move to extend or amend to extend.
Now, is this just a recommendation to the council, or were we have competing things going on here now?
So
the council extended it.
So I wouldn't think it's competing because normally council doesn't get involved in the site aesthetics like paving or not. So I don't think this has any impact on council. I think us approving it allows council to more easily approve the liquor license.
Okay.
Usually council historically hasn't said paving, no paving, or.
So if they were in violation of us, council might look at it, but if they're not in violation of us, they're going to let it go.
I would think so.
Okay. That's my main concern. Okay, so we're in consensus on a year?
Yep.
All right. Next part is the seating. Any discussion or comments on that?
And this, I'll mention, this was something that was brought up. I don't remember who it was, but one of the commissioners brought this up last year. This wasn't necessarily a staff concern because we don't have a regulation that says what an outdoor area needs to look like. It kind of guess depends on the feel you want. Like I said, one of the commissioners brought this up previously, and that's why it was back here.
Groff, you were the one who brought it up for Tailspin, where we made it clear to the petitioner of this is a starting point. You know, you're not just going to throw lawn chairs back there and let it deteriorate over 2 years. You throw lawn chairs back there and then improve it to, I guess, as an example, what P&B Station's doing is kind of where we'd like that things end up eventually.
Right. Although the environment that you're trying to present and the descriptions of what the upgrades would be sound reasonable to me. So I'm not opposed to it.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. So what do we need to change in a resolution on this?
Let me just double check how we have it written. I think we just add be it further resolved that a 1-year extension, so the same thing by the end of June, which that ties to the liquor license period again, which I think is a good time period that makes sense, that they would need to have it paved, right? If that's what you're saying, is give me 1 month's extension?
Yes. And is there anything in here that's in conflict for the outdoor seating?
No, we just says it must not interfere with, the parking lot, which obviously doesn't, it's not near it. We weren't requiring anything different with the outdoor parking, or with outdoor seating, excuse me. So there's nothing that would need to change with that.
All right. Can someone make the motion to amend?
So moved.
I'll second.
Discussion on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say, we're all unanimous. All right, now discussion on the motion as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you. Sure. Thank you. Moving on to resolution PC 042-2021, approval of a building site and operation plan amendment for Associated Bank located at South 76 West 17655 Janesville Road, tax key number 2196966.001.
So moved.
Second.
So this request is for Associated Bank located on the corner of Kristen Drive and Janesville Road. The building currently has, reddish brownish brick material, a lot of white trim, white accent features, has kind of a cupola feature on the roof, kind of some overly, you may call them overly decorative columns, multiple columns at each of the decorative corners. So what was, the bank was hiring Rinka architecture firm to look at doing some, I would call fairly minor, but positive updates to the building. Looking at kind of cleaning up the overall look, Like I said, they're looking at redoing a lot of the trim areas. There's some rotting wood and stuff they want to replace. They're looking at removing the cupola feature that's on the top of the building, as it's non-functional, non-structural, and doesn't really add any enhancement to the property. Maybe even gives dates it a little bit. Anything that would be in poor condition, will be removed and replaced as part of the proposal. They are looking at replacing windows, filling in some areas where there's louvers or vents that are no longer needed, and items such as that. As far as these updates, they will definitely help the building and its longevity. Definitely something that seems like just a facelift, a improvement. A few things we have noted in the resolution are relating that when they remove the cupola dormer feature, that if the roof under it doesn't match, one thing we want is consistency with roofing color, that they get a roofing color that matches, and that's something the architect agreed that was something they were going to take care of already. There is a handful of signage out there right now that is non-compliant, like banners that are being used as temporary signage. They are going to rectify that as part of this project. We have noted that any new or replaced mechanical units, rooftop units, anything like that must be screened or approved by the Plan Commission. We have noted that any patched material on the building, whether it's siding, roofing, brick, whatever, must, like you said, match. We have something noted that no outdoor storage or display, including but not limited to dumpsters, donation boxes, etc., if they're unscreened, must need Plan Commission approval or be screened. We've had some issues in the past with some of these donation closed boxes that are on random sites through the city. We've actually had quite a few complaints over the years just because they're not always tended to well, and sometimes stuff gets stacked all around them. We've always had the policy that if somebody wants to have those donation boxes, they can come ask for them at Plan Commission. Well, no one's ever wanted to do that because I think most of the companies just don't maintain them too well. So there was one we noticed on site here that as part of this would formally have to be removed. It shouldn't have been there in the first place. The only other thing on this note is you will see in front of you, there are 2 printouts that we provided. The architect contacted me recently and noted that talking to some of the bank higher ups, there was some talk about possibly repainting the whole building. So right now, like I said, you'll see an existing photo, which you can see, from Google or from Street View, what the building looks like today. Keep in mind, there'll be some minor modifications to that with the proposal. But then the other drawing that you'll see that shows like a white building, it's a rendering. A lot of the newer Associated Bank branches have like lighter colors or whites with a green band. So they kind of wanted it, they were thinking about doing this motif there, and this was the direction that the bank officials decided they maybe wanted to look now. Some concerns on the staff end is being that a lot of the buildings in this portion of Janesville Road have a lot more residential character. I'm not saying a commercial building has to have residential character, but in this area they do. If you look at most of the tenants as you head eastward, a lot of them look like little houses. They have, hipper gable roofs. They have the shingles you see, a lot more warm and earth tone colors. The Downtown Design Guide does recommend more earth toney kind of colors. Just in looking at the rendering, the staff had some concerns with just kind of the starkness of that full white building, or at least the existing building. You have some kind of nice juxtaposition of, the brown brick, but with the white trim, so it's not just one kind of bright, maybe you could say bland, maybe not color palette. I mean, you can maybe make the case that the white's just cleaner or simpler with the green band. It's really something the Plan Commission should talk about. When the resolution was written, it did not account for that painting. So that if the Plan Commission is in favor of this white painting, which is what they do want the request to be, we would amend the resolution to allow that. And if we aren't going to allow that, we probably should amend it either way, just since it kind of came in after the fact. I want to make sure their approval is accurate to what the Plan Commission's wishes are. We don't have any issues with any of the original proposal stuff. It would really just be the question of, are we okay with the white with the green versus the color that's there today? As part of their original proposal, the brick would stay the normal brick color. Their amended proposal is the white.
Okay.
Looks kind of stark.
My personal opinion, the white is just way too stark for that area. It's a commercial business. I just don't think it flows with our downtown, going into our downtown area. Whether they keep the brick or it's a different color, say the more than natural neutral tones that we have in a lot of the other properties. I don't particularly think that rendering that they've got here to my left, the white with the green banner, would be suffice for what we're trying to accomplish in our Janesville Road.
The applicant is here also. Hello.
Good afternoon. My name is John Fox. I'm an architect with Rinka. We are Associated Bank's architecture firm. Happy to discuss any questions you may have. I have been in discussion with Adam over the last several weeks on this project. I do apologize for the late change. It was not my intent to change our deck after submitting for this review, but as Adam mentioned, it was something that came down from a higher position, and that was a request for a previous proposal that had been looked at to go to white. I think in part of the rationale for this move is this is a surprisingly tricky little building. It's a fairly old building. It's had several different lives prior to being a bank. I suspect it's been added onto a number of times and altered, and as such, it just has a very complex geometry for something so small. There's a lot of stuff going on, basically, and part of the argument for going to a solid tone is to simplify and unify the building, as was pointed out, since there are so many ins and outs and a variety of buildings and additions and different situations going on. Part of our goal was to create a simplified look. As far as the residential nature of businesses, I would say that the building is actually improving in some nature due to that with the removal of the cupola, which is a bit of I think, an albatross on top of the building. I think it changes the scale in a very strange way. And I think it makes it less residential in a way. Actually, I think the scale and the form of the building certainly work with residential, and you don't have to go more than a few blocks to find a White House within either side of this building. So our request would be that the item is amended to include the white paint, and I'm certainly happy to respond to any other questions that you have.
Personally, I like the white, but I'm not sure that I have the position to be able to tell this group or you which way you should go. I think it's very subjective.
Are there any other color choices that have been come to your through the powers to be? Was white the only option they gave you?
That's a good question. I don't know. This proposal, as you note, is noted. This is an older drawing that we had provided them in 2018. I can't speak directly to how many different proposals they saw at that time frame. It was an executive who happened to remember this proposal from seeing it, several years ago, and said, "Hey, I thought we were doing white on this one. Let's do white." And that gentleman happened to be high enough up that when he says, "Let's do white," I'm here speaking to you.
You signed your check, you're saying?
Been there.
Well, it's a bank. Everybody's signing checks. That's really the payoff. It's tough to maintain brand standards for a bank that's grown through acquisition. Associated Bank is named as such because they are, they started as an association of banks here in Wisconsin. They kept buying more banks and consolidating banks and growing. So, some of their properties are non-conforming to what their internal standard are. So, we're not here trying to throw aluminum on the building. We're not here trying to, use shiny metal panels that we might use on a new building. We're trying to say, within the scale and respectful to both the building itself and to the community that it's in.
My wife doesn't let me pick out colors, so, but I get this, where the alarming of it being so stark is, and yes, you made a point that there is a white, in fact, I think it might be called the White House across the street, or one right down the street. Mm. It almost is like we're getting too many of them. My own thought would be if they could break up the white somehow, one of the short walls or something broke up with something, but again,
what
I'm
if,
not allowed to
Or trim a different color.
or if they required more foliage in front, trees or something to bring some color on the front? I'm looking at the to the left of the entrance. There's greenery there, or maybe some kind of greenery. There's a lawn. At least you could put something there.
The concern is they usually don't want it to be too high to start covering windows and stuff. So then, is it low enough scale that it's making a difference? I don't know. It's a good question.
What's everyone else think?
Well, I understand there's a White House down there, but there's no white businesses on Janesville Road.
Well, there's actually two.
Are there businesses?
The White House, that new
One
one.
called the White House and then the Salon.
Could you put shutters on
That's
those
right.
windows, doors?
You know, in an attempt at some architectural honesty, we're actually looking at stripping purely ornamental shutters off of the building. I think that as you have a public that's a little more critical with more design, popularity, and the public is starting to look at stuff, criticisms that faux shutters are tacked on, starts to become a bit of a liability. And I think you'd see that there's more effort to streamline and clean things up rather than to put.
I would say
purely
minimalistic
ornamental.
versus streamlined. I don't see any character on the building, but that's just my personal.
I agree.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, I have no, it would be subjective either way.
It'll stick out.
Adam, how do we
Well,
typically?
if it were twice as big, I'd be more concerned, but it's not a very big building
Right.
in the first place.
It is not.
I just don't,
Yeah.
How do we typically do this? Right now,
I guess.
I don't want to design from up here by any means. I don't want to tell you what the design is. I can tell you what I like and what I don't like, but
I mean, we could. I don't know. Hearing what the comments I hear, I think it's just the idea of this monotone panel, right? So, is there some middle ground where maybe I think one of the things that I think with the building that works currently is just ideas. It's just not, you get a little bit of two-toneness between the white and the brick. Is there the ability to do some kind of trim or accent feature that's slightly off from the white to just give it something? I don't know, that's my 2 cents. I don't know. I just feel like that maybe is at a middle ground. Since I'm hearing one side, I'm hearing another side. Is there some middle ground that, I don't think you should paint half the brick white or anything like that. I'm not proposing that. I think if you're going to paint it all. But do you maybe have trim or accent features, a certain color that works with the white, but tones it down? I don't know.
what's your time frame on this?
Our client is looking to start as soon as we can get permit in hand.
Can you put black posts?
Pardon?
I don't know.
No.
Change the posts?
I don't want to design.
I mean-
I don't want to design it.
Well, I know, well, that's what I'm saying here. We're gonna be here we're ready till midnight, so, I mean,
We are not asking for any short-term rental, just to.
But the green van looks good.
Touche.
They said it's a preference of the commission. This is a hard one. I don't know if you just straw poll and see which direction it's going and see if a motion passes. I don't know.
Well, I know where it's at right now. I can count. But
No right or wrong answer
Yeah.
here.
Oh, man. All right, what do you guys want to do?
I'm fine. I actually think it is, I mean, it stands out. It's not plain. I kind of like it.
I think it's clean.
Yeah,
It's
so much crap for all the other way we style, with, along Moreland and Janesville, the clocks, oh gosh, this is rather, it's like a change, it's nice.
I think I would throw in there that, it is worth pointing out that, roughly about a third of this building is gray because it's shingle.
Yeah.
And then another fair portion of it is glass. If it were a warehouse with no windows on a major residential road, I think I would certainly understand the argument.
Throw a red tree, right?
You said there was black on there? What part of
He suggested.
Nice, gray roof.
No,
Gray roof.
there's no proposed. I believe one of the other councilmen had.
Yeah. He started designing it.
They make the post black.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
It looks like the executive did this in Photoshop. I know you guys can do better. I've seen stuff you've designed.
And they're just, and architecturally or engineering wise, you're just trying to, and I like all the changes that were made other than the color. Why getting away from the brick? What was the rationale for that?
Cleaning up the building, with all the ins and outs and the various stormers, we felt like a a cleaner approach was simpler and had a more unified appeal than a building that we're, a large part of what we're working on this is to simplify and make the building look cleaner and a little more professional than what it likely is, which is something that has been added on to again and again and again without a real grand scheme in place.
Okay, so with the rendering that I'm looking at with the all white and the green banner, what is the entranceway, the vestibule area? Is that, look like a pitted glass or something on there? Is it a change from what's existing now?
So we are proposing in the first part of the proposal that Adam pointed out, we are going to be rebuilding the entryway. We'll be using a painted aluminum storefront system there. The existing entryway right now is a wooden system, wooden glaze system of the same size that is failing just due to age and rot. And largely what most of the actions we're taking on this project are simply keeping the building in the community longer because it's reaching a point in its life where it is in need of service. And that's what has started this whole process.
Could that vestibule area be, an accent color and it gives some character to the front entranceway versus just a sterile, white and aluminum color?
Right now we are projecting that would be a white painted aluminum and that and then the rest of it would be glass. Pardon me, the rest of it would be glass.
Okay. See, that's actually the part of the building I like.
Yeah, I was going to say that's almost
that's the one
all
part
glass,
I like. I don't want to change that. I don't know. How long is it going to take for construction?
I would have to verify with our general contractor who is setting the schedule. I believe it's around 3 months, but I don't have that number in front of me.
Can we approve the construction part and have you come back with another option on this? You may get this, but I'd like to see something. It's not going to, a month out, it's not going to change your painting plan, will it? Couldn't they get the permits on the rest?
So
couldn't they get the permits on everything but the coloring?
Are we talking about
We would
just
approve
trim
it
colors?
like-
Are we talking trim colors?
Something.
Yeah.
Something.
Gray window trim versus
Just
white.
something,
Is that what we're talking about?
Something.
Not stark, not black, just.
Something. Like I said, I don't want to design this. I don't want to design it.
Yeah, I don't want to design it either. I think overall conceptually it's clean, it's good. I like it.
I would say, Mr. Mayor, in response to your question, will it affect construction time? It actually possibly could. Matching brick, although our masons are very good at matching brick, and we've had a lot of very successful attempts to do that in the past, they can do it much more quickly if they only have to match a texture rather than a texture and a color, which would potentially be a construction timeline that would be adjusted by whether or not the color, at least on the brickwork, changes.
Fine.
Yeah, I wasn't crazy about it until I thought about the fact that it is a really small building. It's not like, it looks bigger here than it really is.
I'm not going to die on this hill, so.
Either way, we should make an amendment to basically which proposal, just because this was an add-on. So someone wants to make a motion to what color that is.
I would say it looks better than what previously was there. So I guess I could live with that.
Can someone want to make a motion for the aesthetic part of it?
Move to
Make a
approve.
motion to adopt the white version.
Is there a second? All right. All those in favor of the motion to amend,
Aye.
say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. The motion as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You have
Thank
your
you
white
very much for
building,
your
sir.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to Resolution PC 045, approval of a building site and operation amendment for Eagle Park Brewery located on Commerce Center Parkway, tax key number 21669970003.
Second.
Discussion, Adam.
So this proposal is for temporary outdoor seating. The brewery that's located kind of just northeast of Walmart as a landmark in the business park area over there. They had temporary seating approval during kind of our COVID provisions where they could get a outdoor seating permit with staff approval. And they had like 4 or 5 picnic tables located in the front of the parking lot in an area that was originally approved as part of their first approval, their original approval for outdoor seating long term. Their plan now is just during the 2021 year or summer season, whatever you want to call it, that their proposal is to, per the plan, basically block both sides, an east side and a west side of this one part of the parking lot, which will allow them to, double or maybe even triple their outdoor seating for this summer, while they work on a plan for their permanent outdoor seating, which they did have, like I said, an outdoor seating plan approved from Plan Commission originally, but it sounds like they may be looking to alter that. As part of this, since they are blocking, if you want to call it through traffic, there'll still be a service drive around the east side of the building for deliveries and pickups, so that won't be hindered. And there still is an entrance for customers on the west side of the complex. It's just going to be when the cars come in on that west driveway, they're going to come down, and when they get to the end, they just won't be able to go through. They would have to turn around. So one of the things staff mentioned that the applicant agreed to was blocking off, I believe it's a few stalls for turnaround purposes, because as we all know, if you get to the end of just a normal 2-lane parking lot, unless you're backing all the way out, which may be a little tricky, it's hard to turn around. So they would basically be blocking off some stalls to make it like a T so that you'd have some ability to turn around so cars wouldn't just be stuck down on that end. So that was something we were recommending, which they did mention they were going to do. We would just want to know how they're going to block those off, because you can't use cones or something, because how can you pull into a spot with cones if you're trying to back up. So that's something the applicant would need to kind of just get us some detail on. Otherwise, staff doesn't really see any issues, especially since it is kind of a temporary thing. We also do note, though, that we just want to know exactly what they're using for like barricades to block these off. We'd rather not see like construction barricades, just doesn't look the best. Originally, when I talked to one of the owners, he mentioned using like liquor barrels or whiskey barrels as blockades, which I think would be a pretty neat decorative thing. I don't know if that's still the intention or not. So I guess we just want to know what's going to be out there, as we want to make sure it's not something that's too unattractive.
You don't look like Max.
Too
No,
unattractive.
Max. I know. He's like, I owe you.
Did you bring any samples?
That's what I was going to say. Next time I'll bring beer,
Barrels, if you could get beer.
Yeah, so actually I'm Amanda. I'm the director of taproom operations for both locations. And so actually at Hamilton downtown, if you've been there, we are just expanding our our outdoor area right now too, just because of given the circumstances this past year. So in doing so, we originally had thought to do some sort of barrels. We do have spirits at Muskego here as well with our distillery. However, when they're filled or if there's something in them, they get extremely heavy. And since also my husband is a firefighter, he's, very particular in, emergency evacuation, et cetera. So I had actually found some planters on wheels. So I have photos and stuff that I can also send to you if you would need them.
Sure. I think that'd be fine.
Yeah. And so I have the size, dimensions, et cetera, that are easily movable, can be moved at any time by anyone.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great solution.
Yeah, so little greenery for the,
Sure.
patio area.
Works. Yeah, I think I'm fine with that, completely fine. We just maybe email over to us what they would look like, just before we put the tables out. And then just like I said, wanting to know how those stalls will be kind of kept open for cars to turn around in.
Yeah.
Those are only concerns. Otherwise, we think it's a nice addition for them. And then we just noted in there, and obviously you can pass this on to the team, is like I said, there was an outdoor approved plan, which it was so long ago, maybe not everyone knows it exists, and that if it's going to change, that's fine, but a change would have to come back here for a permanent solution.
So my first question, and you alluded to it with your husband being a firefighter, is that as far as safety, the customers coming in and turning around is one thing, but what's going to be the ingress egress for if there was a fire, with that blocking the thoroughfare there?
Well, I can tell you that we definitely don't have requirements. I mean, like for subdivisions, we allow cul-de-sacs significantly longer than this. Sync dead end roads. We have lots of parking lots. The business right next door to the east has a long dead end driveway. So it's not uncommon to have a parking lot that has an end to it. The key is when they get to the end, how do they turn around?
Okay.
Yeah, and we, Max and I had talked about doing the T, and we can do more than 2 spots. We also talked to our leasing person as well, and she was fine with
Yeah.
whatever we would decide to do if it went through.
Yeah, it could be a simple signage or something, or temporary markings or something. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know we also do have additional parking down the road, and we also, next to the chip company, have releasing across the street as well with additional parking too. So,
And the handicap parking is still accessible? I mean, you
Yes.
still,
Mhm.
that won't be encroached in that space?
nope.
All right, further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night. Moving on to discussion, PC 0332021, discussion of a conceptual land division for John Merrick located on South 81 West 20871 Russet Court, tax key number 22299920006.
For these items, the next 3 items are all conceptual, and just as a friendly reminder, these do not have a formal approval or denial. We don't need motions. We aren't voting on them. It's really a process the applicant chooses to go through voluntarily to get feedback, so they should kind of know where they go forward with their proposal. So this first one is for a conceptual land division, which ultimately ties into a conceptual rezoning, you could say, for a 10-lot single-family subdivision, along with 1 outlot for stormwater management. This property right now is located on a little stub of a road, excuse me, that if you were to drive out there today, you probably wouldn't even know it was a public road. It really is a glorified driveway that 2 homes, existing homes, access off of. Those 2 homes are zoned RS2, which requires 20,000 square foot lots. But if you do look in your submittal, there's a map that kind of shows zoning of the area. The predominant area is zoned RS1, which is 30,000 square foot lots. So the lot today is zoned 30,000. And with the proposal here, like I said, the 10 lots works only if that rezoning is granted to match the RS2 that matches those 2 lots in front. Like I said, the general area is predominantly zoned RS1. With this proposal and with the RS1 versus RS2, one thing I think it's worth noting is looking at, we kind of look at areas always. When you look at, can you put that one on here? Yeah. When you look at the surrounding area, the subdivision that's located to the south of here, which is Fireside Orchard, there's basically 1 vacant lot in that subdivision to the south. That subdivision is RS1, just to give you a perspective of scale. One thing that we kind of thought is that there was some emphasis on the RS1 making sense at the staff level, just because this subdivision that's proposed would have to have a road stub to the south that would most likely at some point connect to the Fireside Orchard Road, which these 2 neighborhoods would be connected. That doesn't mean a neighborhood can't have 2 different lot sizes within it, but if the Plan Commission was concerned with consistency, that would be something to think about. We don't really have any questions with layout or anything like that. All the things that staff has suggested with connections and stuff, the developer has provided, so we commend that. We just note that one thing that the developer would need to be really cognizant of is they are showing filling some wetlands, which the DNR may allow. If the DNR allows it, we're okay with it. If they don't, we're not, but that's dependent on some other lots happening or not. They would have to have a formal wetland delineation completed, and then if they do wish to fill it before they would submit a pre-plat, or as part of it, they would need to submit to us approvals of those filled wetland areas. Otherwise, I really think the biggest question is that question of the zoning. Do you suggest keeping it RS1 30,000, or do you allow it to go down to the RS2 at 20,000? Both of those meet the existing comprehensive plan densities.
Does the petitioner have anything to add? Mr. Merrick?
No. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Commission members. Really, for financially, for it to work, I need the RS2 zoning. The infrastructure costs would remain the same whether it stayed RS1 or RS2. You're still going to put in the same road, same stub, same infrastructure, but it just doesn't make any financial sense if we didn't get the RS2 zoning.
Discussion.
I don't have a problem with 20,000 square feet is still, it's not that much different.
How did we get that two in there. I'm trying to remember.
My guess is they were like non-compliant land divisions, and when we did our comp plan in 2009, if there were existing lots that were non-compliant, we tried to make them compliant. I didn't do the research on it, but that was done in a lot of areas, so that's my hunch. But
There's two of them that are here that were not compliant, and I wonder if we just did that.
Those have been there for way,
Yeah, and
they
we just
predate
did
me and
that.
you being anywhere around here.
Because it would be, because this doesn't make.
there was a lot of those cleanup things done in the 2009 recodification and comp plan, so I'm guessing that's what it was.
Look for like, but looking at this and when I looked at my notes, which I couldn't find anything on this, so it must have just been not conforming. And
That's what I'm speculating.
yeah, I don't have an issue with RS2 here. Generally, I mean, you would follow the pattern, but there's really no reason to. Yeah, I don't see a reason why I would not object to an RS2 based on this.
Any other comments?
Yeah.
Give you your direction?
I think I have my direction.
Okay.
No, common council may disagree with us, but.
Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. Take care. Good
Thank you.
night. All right, PC 039 2021, discussion of a conceptual architectural style for vintage grounds.
So this proposal is kind of a unique one. I think the idea is unique in a good way, but also kind of a different kind of proposal than we've had before. So the owners of Vintage Grounds, who's the local homegrown coffee shop here, knows that they're growing, which is a good thing, and they know that there's going to be need for more expansion. So they don't have a specific site in mind at this time, but they know that at some point they're going to may have to relocate to try to do something bigger. And they would mention they'd hope to be in the same general area within a few blocks. The big question here, though, is more of an architectural type. So what they're looking at doing, and you'll see they submitted a couple photos of examples that they liked of buildings that are basically solely made out of, or either additions to buildings made out of shipping containers. I'm sure as you've been around Southeast Wisconsin area the past few years, you see these are more and more common. Some people use them on a temporary basis at like beer gardens and stuff. Some use them permanently, like a lot of the pictures you see here. It gives it a kind of different, fun aesthetic. Some might call it more modern or contemporary just because of the metal. Some might call it more rustic, also because of the metal. So, it can almost bridge a handful of styles depending what you do with it. So it's really the question here of, does the Plan Commission see this being something that they could be receptive to in these general styles and these general ideas down the road? It's important to note that with a lot of these, like you see, people might add rooftop seating, they might add overhangs. A lot of times you cut away a lot of the paneling to have windows or garage doors or something. So it's not like you're just looking at a metal box. Their Plan Commission would eventually have control or oversight, I should say, on colors and things like that. It's more just, are we good with the idea? One thing that we kind of thought is, I think that the key is in the right area. In the downtown area, I think this would be a great fit. We do have a few areas that have design guides that are more stylistic, like Historical Design Guide or Prairie Craftsman. Maybe it wouldn't fit as well in those areas, maybe not. But I definitely think in the areas, especially within a few blocks of where they're looking now, I think it would be a good fit personally. I think it's kind of a fun, neat kind of destination thing, because they're not, as much as they're becoming more common, they're not that common yet.
How would this fit in the
Light, Mike.
Sorry.
You have a fan base that follows you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Hear you.
How would this fit in the HC1 with that?
The HC1 is deemed more historic, so the way the current HC1 design guide, I probably would say it wouldn't fit well, but the Plan Commission would have discretion over that if it were to come in the HC1 area. Or that's something that maybe we could look to change some of those boundaries or what the guides require at some point.
So Adam and I spoke about this a little bit, and my comment on some of the, Brian Turk went nuts with design guides all over town. I mean, we have design guides for areas that have maybe one building that's really taken advantage of it since. So in areas that have those design guides haven't taken root yet, I myself would be receptive to, okay, maybe we look at reinventing that area or something like that. But that's just me.
Okay, go for it. This is nice.
But context is everything. It wouldn't fit
Yeah.
everywhere, but there's a lot of
Right.
places it might.
Except for the AC outside, you know.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, some of these, have things that, that you normally would say, hey, not that or not that. And I think color would be important.
Pink.
Yeah.
Big.
Yeah.
Or white.
Yeah, I wasn't sure which ones you guys, but yeah, like that one, I mean, it wouldn't be that big, because.
That would be decent.
But.
Oh, that would be nice.
That's kind of our favorite.
Let's do that. Okay. Can you make that happen?
What's that?
Can you make that happen?
Which the top one?
Yeah.
Could you make it in all white? That would be.
With a green banner.
Green, yeah. Yeah, once you guys started questioning the white paint, we're like, oh, they're gonna hate this.
They're not gonna like it.
Just because it's a little more radical than white paint. But,
No, I like it.
No, I like red.
That one I like.
Yeah, I think it really becomes a destination, or you call it an icon almost.
Right across from Pick and Save, be perfect.
Yep.
I mean, this is what we're probably in demand of from the younger generation, and people that frequent coffee houses.
Well, any place. I've been to right outside the National Stadium in DC, which was one of the most dangerous rundown areas in the country. And you get off the subway now, and they have beer gardens that are made out of these things, and it's really cool. I mean, it's just there's some neat areas. So
yeah, I think a couple of quick things. I'm Ryan. Aaron runs it full time, but I'm the loud one. So we thought it doesn't terribly mismatch either. Some of like the Will Rose Apartments or the View.
Yeah.
In that they have kind of a metal modern look to them. So as long as they're not a bright color, it's not horribly out of place, we felt like. And then two was that one that we were looking at, either something like that or one where there is like two together with one on top of the one, so that you've got an open balcony and a rooftop type feel, is not something, as you know, that exists around here, the rooftop thing. And I think people would go nuts for that. This might be the wrong place to ask that though, about like, I've had some friends say, no, you'd be fine for the ADA stuff as long as they can buy stuff downstairs. You wouldn't need to do such and such. And other people tell me you're nuts. You would need an elevator and crazy sprinkler system that are going to run you hundreds of thousands of dollars. Is this the correct place to ask that? Or that's
So it's an example of that's where you want to hire an architect. So I mean, even doing crates doesn't mean it's just, hey, drop off the crates and go. I mean, you'll have to hire a commercial architect because it'll be a commercial building, and if you hire anyone who's qualified, they will know all those requirements exactly. They'll know about sprinklers, elevators, accessibility. That's going to be your best friend. And, like I said, I don't know, if you can find anyone around here that's done these, hey, who did you use? It's probably a good one, because I'm sure it's a little bit unique, but any commercial architect should be able to help you.
Yeah, we think we have a lead on that.
Yep.
But this is a concept in search of a place?
Kind of.
Yeah, this was, we were fortunate. We flourished during COVID, and she continues to now flourish more. And it's good, but then it's like we sit there and have a coffee on Monday morning and we're watching people drive away because it's so busy that we're like,
There's too many, it's such a bottleneck back there because the narrow design of the building that we're in, you can't get in and out.
Yeah.
So
then we've looked at a handful of lots in Muskego. Two of them we ran into contamination issues with ground and not being able to break ground. Well, that circumvents that. Two is obviously the cost of building right now is outrageous, and that circumvents some of that because some of these you don't need to stud out depending on how you build them. So she was watching one of her shows one night where it's actually the builder. I think he's out of Oshkosh.
Yeah,
and he's doing these nationally, and it's on one of the, I don't know if it's Hulu or whatever. And so we were like, wait a minute.
Things never go as smoothly as they do on TV.
No. Especially if
you can't build a building in a day. What do you mean?
Don't do it in 3 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. We're glad you at least like the idea.
Yeah, I think you're getting a positive thumbs up in the right area. One of the apartments you mentioned, I don't know if they have plans for it or not, but there's a commercial lot on the corner of one of them that they might and
to your point, it's like, I think it's going to be hard for a normal building to go there, whereas this might be able to fit there and deal with the contamination issue. So,
he's talking about somewhere else.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's talking about Will Rose.
Oh, yeah.
We did meet with them. That
we did. Yeah.
A lot of money.
We don't have millions, so.
Unless anybody has extra money.
Right.
So, all right.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, discussion of a conceptual land division for Kirkland Crossing located between College Avenue and Martin Drive, tax key number 2170-991, 2173-998, 2173-997, and 2176-999.
So this proposal is for a new possible subdivision. It would be 101 new single-family lots, and there'd be 2 lots that would be kind of split off existing lots. So a total of 103 lots when the development would be all said and done. There's also 5 outlots that would currently, they're currently shown for stormwater, open space, and access purposes. The overall plan is showing approximately 31% of the total development being preserved as open space within the outlots. And the reason for the conceptual review is really just to kind of solicit comments for discussion, and kind of like the other subdivision one, a lot of it relates to rezoning. First and foremost, as far as comp plan density goes, the proposed 103 units is well within the density range for this area. And I should step back a second. The proposed density range for this area, this general area east to the back end of the business park in our current future land use plan shows as a low density residential. It was kind of a little donut hole that's surrounded by medium or commercial and when looking at our comprehensive plan, which we're trying to wrap up updating, we realized, we kind of said to ourselves, why is this little donut hole here? You know, there's higher density around it. Why don't we look at having higher density here? And when I say higher, I mean medium density, nothing too crazy. Medium density is what's in the predominant area. As part of that, then, our engineering and utility staff commissioned our engineering consultants to do a little bit of a sewer study of this area to kind of see, because there was a little bit of interest in this general vicinity, and they did a sewer study to say, hey, you know, sewer service is a big thing, and if it can be gravity fed, that saves a lot of money. So the idea is, can gravity service work here? The kind of brief study that was done quickly showed us, and very happily showed us, that yes, gravity sewer works for a good portion, if not all of this area, which really told us then, as part of this comprehensive plan, we should be recommending medium density residential here, which will be forthcoming hopefully shortly. In this case though, development team approached us for this development, and they were proposing something. We talked about this sewer study, we talked about the medium density, and what they're looking at doing is basically expediting that process to ask for a medium density potentially sooner than our comp plan would get it there, but very much in line with what staff would be suggesting. And then as part of this, the current zoning is RS1 in most of the area. There's a small area that's RSE. What they'd be looking at is asking for a planned development zoning based upon the RS2 zoning. RS2 is 20,000 square feet, as we just talked about. They would not be asking for any lot size modifications, so they are saying they would keep that 20,000 square foot. So as part of the planned development, they aren't asking for an amendment to that. What they would be asking for, in an effort to try to preserve as much of the kind of quality wooded areas and wetlands as possible, they are asking for some reductions to lot width. There's a handful of lots that would be down to 90 feet in width, a handful of lots that would be 100. Normally the RS2 is 110, but that's definitely a waiver the Plan Commission and Council could grant as part of a plan development. And like I said, it was in an effort to not kind of waste land and still have a number of lots that works for them. They are all asking then for some setbacks and offset reductions, which is not uncommon when you have a lot that's a little bit more narrow. And they are also asking for a reduction to the open space on each lot. Normally for RS2, you'd have to keep 15,000 square feet open, or 75% of the lot. They're asking to keep 70% of the lot as open space. As part of the development, they would have to extend water from about 2,300 feet down to the east. That would have to come up Martin, so they would be bringing public water to this area, as well as sewer is close. They would just be running it through the development. Sewer, water, and roads would also be stubbed to the property to the east of this for future expansion potential, because there's kind of a concept that shows how there could be another extension wing to the east of this someday down the road. As far as access goes, they're showing one access off of Martin Drive, and they're showing one access on College on the far northwest side of the development. Those would be the two main egress points. And then there would be a kind of longer, I'll call it a dead-end cul-de-sac on the far east side of the property. That is intentionally not connecting to College because of some concerns with sight lines and curvature of the road, and not thinking the county would be too receptive to that, as county's a College road. So on the northeast side of the development, there would be an emergency access driveway proposed, so that for emergency reasons, we we can get in, but the public wouldn't be transitioning through that area. Overall, staff feels could be a great plan for the area. It's in line with what staff and administration has been thinking of internally, seeing that medium density. I think it's a pretty unique development and pretty cool character, and think it could fit well and help, hit some of the market that's missing right now with lots in the city. So, staff thinks it's a good idea, but looking for feedback on the plan development. Any other comments or concerns?
I've only got one. Lot 76 and...
Microphone.
Lot 76 and 75. So is the egress off of the new street that's going in? So you've got two driveways right off of that? Or is one off of Court G and one's off of the...
I don't think it would really matter. I mean, usually corner lots have the ability, because they'll have to provide this stub either way to the edge.
I guess I'm just questioning lot 76, I guess. Why do we want it so close off? I mean, is that a...
Bill Carity. There will be an extension. You can see that Stub Street that heads towards the east there. And if it was important to you, I imagine that we could consider a reconfiguration of those two lots. It's merely concept.
Because you would do that under part 2 then, right? You would just build off on that. Maybe that's not a big deal then?
We have situations where that exists, where you have a short stub with 1 or 2 homes on it. That's not uncommon.
I guess, and then you just...
It's going to be extended.
Yeah, we'll get that. I figured, and I'm guessing then you'll just probably extend it just at a later date then. Yeah, okay.
For sure.
All right, never mind. I answered my own question.
Could I ask, if this is approved, will you have multiple builders or just one builder?
No, this will not be a closed subdivision. It will be open to a variety of different builders. And so no, it's not intended to be closed in any sense.
And all single-family homes?
All single-family homes.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I just step into this conversation a bit. We've spent a fair amount of time with staff. We've spent time with the county. We've done wetland delineations. There will be no filling of any wetlands. We've spent time with Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission with regard to preservation of the woods. And we have tried to preserve as much of the woods as humanly possible, recognizing that we're going to have to penetrate that woods with that road that you can see that bisects it. And this is unique parcels. It's an assemblage of 3 different ownerships. And we really would appreciate as much feedback as we can possibly get at this point in time, because we'd like to bring a preliminary plat to you yet this summer. And we have to close on one of the parcels here by the end of the summer. So any kind of feedback that you care to offer us, we will continue to work with Adam, his staff, and Public Works to try to make this successful. Adam was clear from the very beginning. We're really appreciative of his feedback with regard to the 20,000 square foot lots and the need to pattern the road through between Martin and College. And I think it'll be a great addition with really nice wooded backdrop to the city.
Bill, are you showing any wetland on private property?
No, I believe that
I'm not seeing it. I just want to be clear, that's not on there, right?
Every wetland will be on an outlot. There will be no wetlands. And Adam has explained to us that we want to delineate where the wetlands are with some kind of fencing treatment. And so, no, there's no wetland fills and no wetlands found on any of our proposed 20,000 square foot lots. Is there any concern about these lot widths? We have a few at 90 feet wide, and most of them are
I see that here, but they're not
wide.
like a big concern though, I think.
What would the setbacks be on the 90 foot, like 8 feet, 10 feet?
So from the sides, they're asking for, I think it was 12 and a half, correct?
12.5 on the sides.
12.5 on
30
each
the
side.
front.
We're now normally would be in that zoning of 15 to 20, so not a huge change.
All the concessions they're asking for are minor.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
How is the ingress off of Martin Drive being accounted for? You got that turning rate coming down off the top of that hill, and you got Landon Drive coming and dead ending into Martin, and you're going to have another entrance ingress into this subdivision. That's going to be a really heavily traveled property right there. How is that being addressed?
We know that there will be a right-of-way dedication that'll be required with probably SL, decel lanes that will taper into our entrance. And so we've been working with Public Works on that. And have expectations of doing a fair amount of paving right there. I'm not really sure. We haven't completed that design. But we're aware of sighting distances, braking distances, and all the need for control at that intersection.
You know, when people see Kirkland, they think Costco.
And they what?
That's what I thought first.
The name.
It was the first parcel I put under contract was.
Could you stand up, please? We can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. My name is Ryan Jansen. I'm the developer. Bill has been kind enough to do some consulting and kind of partnering with me on the project, and Josh Vidalco here is the lead engineer. Kirkland comes from the gal to the south that touches Martin Drive. I put the
Salamary property?
What's that?
Salamary's property?
Salamary's, right.
Is that her maiden name? Is Kirkland?
Her dad's name was Kirk.
Okay, all right.
So I put the parcel to the northeast under contract, and then I submitted a well and septic 1 acre concept to Adam when he told me about all this sewer extension. So in order for me to develop this parcel that I had under contract at all, I had to convince Jewel to sell me the Salamary parcel, which took about 4 or 5 months, and Bill and I going back and forth and visiting with her, and it's been a challenge. But her dad's name was Kirk. There's some other.
It was time for her to sell.
What's that?
His timing was right.
Right. Yeah, her kids. She's about 70. She still gets around pretty well, but her kids were pushing her. I don't think the kids wanted to deal with it when she passes. So.
I think it's a good layout myself.
Yeah, it's great.
Is there any concern that the run between College and Martin ends up just being a shortcut?
We've had that question come up in different subdivisions. I think it came up in Astor Hills, and there's definitely things that could be looked at that I'm sure their engineer can maybe propose if we think it's going to be, could you do maybe a small roundabout, which I shouldn't maybe say that because maybe our public works might be cringing right now, or we have done a narrow road profile in one neighborhood, but I think we learned that wasn't the best idea. So, I mean, there's always street calming techniques, traffic calming techniques that we can maybe look at. And that's something that our engineering team and their engineering team could talk out through the road if the consensus is they think it's going to be an issue. They obviously have made it, enough curves and stuff in it to make it not a speed trap. I mean,
it's a big elevation too.
Yeah.
I mean, there's significant elevation between Martin and College.
Where are they relative to the horse barns?
Yeah, and Josh Vidalco with Trio. That was on the forefront of our thinking in some of this planning, and what we find to really inhibit shortcutting, or at least the speed of traffic and the convenience, is to kind of meander roads and bring the street pattern, almost going the opposite of the direction they want to go. If people are going to shortcut and want to go east or west, they usually don't like to travel through a development and go the opposite direction. So we, having that in mind, really tried to lay this out so it had that residential feel. And as you drive in, you kind of disappear into the development. So it pulls the speeds down. It also limits the conduciveness of that fly-through racetrack.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's been a handful of tools that we can suggest or try or work with them on.
We've had this conversation.
It's always hard to speculate cut through, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought Plywood Creek would be this major cut through between Janesville and Let's Road. No,
it's too much of a pain.
Yeah, it's not.
It's not worth it.
And then ever since the addition, it's just it is pure residential there.
I built Quietwood Creek, and it is approximately the same length of street. And whenever you have those longer streets with a lot of curvilinear design, it does calm traffic quite a bit.
Bill, are you putting a recreation trail through this?
No, that's right.
It's true.
I can safely say that we looked at the plan, and the plan does not call for any trail through the development north to south. The one thing we did suggest was just a connection to Park Arthur, which they are kind of accounting for, but that was the only trail that came up in at least the plans that exist today.
2003 or 4 when we had that whole.
I couldn't, yeah. It's, that's just something.
1999,
Yeah. 99.
I think so.
I think it looks nice.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. We look forward to working with you and your staff, and it'd be great.
All right, well done, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
All right.
Thank you.
Any other miscellaneous business?
Just going to make a quick mention that Plan Commission for July is Thursday, July 15th. As a reminder, I think I sent you guys an email.
Yeah, we will not.
I got that one. Yep. Other than that, I think everyone else was good.
Okay. Motion to adjourn would be in order?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, we're adjourned at 9:34.
Oh.
I think this was about 6 meetings combined into one, wasn't it?
Right.
Wow.